Chapter 2448. Tiger did not want to believe his eyes. He had punched a hole in the wall. The wall was made of concrete and steel. Not to mention fists. Even a hammer might not be able to penetrate it. But now he could punch a hole in it. Was this the effect of the devil's potion? It was unbelievable. Tiger felt like he could beat anyone now. Bok was surprised too. He did not expect Tiger to be so compatible with the devil's potion. He also knew the effects of the devil's potion. At the moment, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that he could break an adult bear's neck if he fought it. Tiger looked at his fists. He had never felt so confident before. Even against Qin Zhao he had the courage to say no. What time is the match tonight? What? You can't wait anymore? Bok was satisfied with Tiger's excitement. I feel like I can kill a lion. What an intoxicating power. Night fell. Tiger and Bok set off together, heading to the underground boxing arena. But as soon as the car drove out of the gate, a figure jumped out and blocked their way. Tiger and Bok were both shocked. They took a closer look. Wasn't the person blocking the car Tiger's previous opponent? Tiger remembered that the man was called Hinga. Syndicate was also black. He was taller than Tiger, but he was slightly more slender than Tiger. Bok got out of the car. Hinga, do you want to die? Bok, you said that if I lose to Tiger you'll give me money, Hinga said directly. My daughter needs surgery but you haven't received the money yet. Bok sneered at Hinga. I don't remember saying that. You fucking bastard, you lied to me. Furious, Hinga accused Bok. Fuck off or I'll call the police. Bok looked at Hinga in disdain. I'm going to tell the media. Not only did you make me fight in an underground boxing match, but you also threatened me with my daughter's life. A cold glint flashed across Bok's eyes. It was not his first time making his client fix a match. In the past people had tried to threaten him with this. But now he was still standing here safe and sound. As for the people who threatened him, they had all disappeared. No one has ever dared to threaten me. Do you know where the people who wanted to use these things to threaten me ended up? Bok's glasses flashed with a cold light. Syndicate was actually afraid as well. He had long heard of Bok's reputation in the circle. Notoriety is not enough to describe his badness. Just then Tiger got off too. When Hinga saw Tiger his eyes flashed with hatred. Tiger smiled. Bok, let me handle it. You. Bok was disappointed. How was Tiger going to deal with him? Tiger walked up to Hinga. I don't care what happened between you and Bok, but I'm willing to give you a chance. What opportunity? Let's have a fight. If you win I'll ask Bok to give you the money. When? Where? Sin wasn't afraid of Tiger at all. He felt that Tiger was just a fake. Otherwise his agent would not have looked for him that day and asked him to cooperate with the fake fight. Right here, Tiger said coolly. Tiger crooked his finger. If you can beat me you can get the money. That's what you said. Yes, that's what I said. Tiger twisted his neck. Tiger, you still have a fight later. I know, Tiger said confidently. That's why I need to warm up. Hearing Tiger's words, Hinga was furious. I'm actually just a warm-up for him? He was looking down on him too much. Hinga had already gotten into position. Come on. Let me see where your confidence comes from. Tiger quickly stood in front of Hinga. Let's start. Zinga threw out a left uppercut with a heavy swing. Got it. Hinga was very confident in his attack. Tiger was too arrogant. He actually did not block at all. Indeed, Hinga's prediction was right. His left hook landed heavily on Tiger's chin. But Tiger did not move at all. Instead it was Hinga. He felt like his fist had hit an iron wall. Too weak. You're too weak like this. Tiger shook his head. Hinga's expression changed. He hurriedly retreated into a defensive position. The feeling Tiger gave him now was completely different from last time. Last time in the ring of an official match. He had been prepared to lose. But Tiger's attack, defense, strength, speed and technique had not made him feel pressured at all. In the 7th round of the half-real half-fake match, he purposely showed an opening and was KO'd by Tiger with one punch. But now Tiger gave him the feeling that he was an insurmountable mountain. Tiger attacked. It was a devastating punch. It hit Hinga's arms in front of him first. Crack. In an instant the bones in Syndicate's arms and hands were like broken pieces of wood. But Tiger did not stop. The terrifying power landed directly on Hinga's face. Syndicate's entire body flew a few meters away and fell to the ground, completely unconscious. Bok, are you going to kill his mom? Tiger asked, unconcerned. Bok was about to say, kill him. Suddenly he saw light behind the flower bed across the road. Don't mess around. There are paparazzi, Bok said in a low voice. Let's go. He's lucky, Tiger spat and got into the car. The next day, almost all the media was reporting about the private fight between Hinga and Tiger at night. Hinga was still lying in the hospital, but he still claimed that Tiger and his manager had asked him to fake the fight. But no one believed him, because a paparazzi had recorded the scene of the two of them fighting last night. Tiger was clearly much stronger than Hinga. They could not understand why Tiger would ask Hinga to fake the fight. So, even though Tiger had injured Hinga, more people were willing to support him and believe in him. On the other hand, Hinga had become the target of everyone's hatred. The media made him into a scoundrel and villain. Because he lost the fight, he blackmailed Tiger and used fake news as an excuse. Then he was beaten to the ground by Tiger, which proved his point of view. Qin Zhao watched the news report. He picked up his phone and called West. West, help me investigate someone's identity. President, who do you want to investigate? A man called Sinka, a heavyweight boxer. He's also the guy who made a lot of noise in the news today. Chapter 2449. Mr. Hinga, I'm representing Mr. Tiger. I'm sending you a lawyer's letter. Because you've spread inappropriate comments, my client has suffered great harm and financial loss. So Mr. Tiger has filed a lawsuit and asked for $3 million, Tiger's lawyer said arrogantly. Tiger's lawyer said arrogantly. In his eyes, Hinga was a loser, a joke. Hinga had overestimated himself and fought Tiger. In the end, both in the ring and in terms of influence, he'd been defeated by Tiger's absolute strength. Bang! Suddenly, the door to the ward was pushed open. Both Hinga and Tiger's lawyer froze when they saw an Asian man walk in. Qin Zhao glanced at Tiger's lawyer and then at Hinga. He's your friend. But who are you? Hinga didn't understand the situation. Judging from how Qin Zhao had pushed the door open, he seemed to be here for trouble too. Just like this morning when a fan of Tiger had rushed into the ward to insult him. Qin Zhao didn't answer Hinga's question immediately. Instead he looked at Tiger's lawyer. You can scram now. Who do you think you are? Yellow-skinned monkey. Slap. Qin Zhao slapped Tiger's lawyer, knocking out 2 of his front teeth. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to jail. Tiger's lawyer was still roaring fearlessly. Just then another voice came from the door. Ysef, are you going to sue my boss? Ysef looked up. When he saw Alex, he couldn't help but shiver. She was the queen of the largest law firm in California and the lawyer with the highest winning rate in America in the past decade. Of course, she was also the most expensive lawyer. With a 95% chance of winning, it could be said that it was a nightmare for a lawyer to face Alex in court. Moreover, Alex had the most professional team of lawyers. What frightened Witherspoon the most was what Alex had just said. She didn't call Qin Zhao a client or client. She called him boss. The two were completely different. Is there a way to revoke his lawyer's license? Qin Zhao asked calmly. As you wish, boss. Alex didn't seem to mind either. Give me some private time with Mr. Hinga. Not long after, the ward was cleared. Of course, when they asked Witherf to leave, they still asked for the hospital's security. Syndicate vaguely realized why he was transferred to this hospital. He even arranged a luxurious ward for him and arranged for a professional doctor to treat him. It was very likely that it was arranged by this Asian. Qin Zhao pulled over a chair and sat before Syndicate's bed. Your daughter is also in this hospital and she has already found a matching heart. She can undergo surgery in 3 days, and the surgery fee has already been paid. The best heart transplant specialist in California will be in charge of this surgery. I can't guarantee that the surgery will be a success, but as long as you can think of a reasonable request that can improve the surgery, you can tell me. Qin Zhao said, the best heart transplant specialist in California will be responsible for this surgery. Hearing that, Syndicate knew that there was no free lunch in the world. Qin Zhao hadn't discussed this with him beforehand. But he couldn't refuse the offer. He, Tiger and Bok were in a heated argument. Their ultimate goal was to raise money for his daughter's heart transplant. What do you need from me? Take a look at this contract. It was an investment contract. It was the one that Qin Zhao had signed with Ford and Tiger. However, this contract was more complete than the previous one. After all, Qin Zhao's legal team had helped draft it. At the same time, the terms were even harsher. If Syndicate broke the contract, he would either have to become a miner in Africa or sleep on the streets for the rest of his life. "Where's the pen?" Syndicate asked. "Didn't you discuss the contract's content with me? I can't find a reason to refuse. My daughter's surgery cost $300,000, and then you have to pay for my treatment, rehabilitation, nutrition, and the cost of hiring a rehabilitation coach, fitness coach, and professional boxing coach. The total cost is even higher than my daughter's surgery. What's more, my attending doctor told me that my arm's bones were destroyed, and my arm's nerves were severely injured. That is to say, for a long time in the future or even for the rest of my life, I won't be able to return to the ring with my hands, let alone return to the boxing ring. In your contract, as long as I haven't fully recovered, you have to pay me $20,000 a month. That is to say, even if I don't do anything, I can live a very comfortable life every month. I don't understand why you would refuse this contract." Qin Zhao tossed a pen to Syndicate. Syndicate picked it up with his trembling right hand. However, he couldn't even hold the pen steadily. "You saw it too. Are you sure you want me to sign this contract now?" Qin Zhao nodded. "That's why I came." Syndicate took a deep breath. He suddenly hesitated. He still couldn't figure out Qin Zhao's identity. He couldn't understand Qin Zhao's intentions. What exactly did Qin Zhao want to do? In the end, Syndicate couldn't resist the temptation of the contract. "What do you want to do?" "Destroy what I once created with my own hands," Qin Zhao said calmly. "I don't know what you mean. A year ago, Tiger was in the same situation as you. His arm was injured. He almost lost everything, his dreams, his future, and his hope." Qin Zhao's tone was a bit emotional. "I gave him the same contract. I gave him a chance to stand on the stage of his dreams again, but he disappointed me. I once told him that I can take back what I can give him with my own hands." Xin Jia abruptly looked up at Qin Zhao. He vaguely remembered that when Tiger debuted last year, he would always say something like his teacher in every interview after he won a match. Every interview was the same. Now he suddenly understood something. But he also felt that Qin Zhao was too cruel to destroy the disciple he'd trained with his own hands. Syndicate didn't understand Qin Zhao. Now Qin Zhao wasn't just disappointed in Tiger. He also hated him. Qin Zhao found Tiger's ex-girlfriend. They'd broken up long ago. Tiger, on the other hand, had given his ex-girlfriend severe physical and psychological trauma. Some of the damage was even hard to talk about. Qin Zhao vaguely remembered that when he'd first met Tiger and his ex-girlfriend, he'd sincerely wished them well. Now that he thought about it, it was so funny. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2450. Mr. Tiger. With earth covered his face. He just received a lecture from Alex. She'd also told him how rich her boss was. At the same time, she'd told him the terrifying consequences of becoming his enemy. At the same time, she'd helped Qin Zhao pass on a message. That's what he said. Tiger's expression was cold. There was even a hint of fear. "Can I take back what I gave myself?" Bok glanced at Tiger. "Tiger, he's not as scary as you think. He's in the past now." "No, Bok, you don't understand. He's really scary. He's the devil." Tiger's tone became urgent. "Did you know that he and I were blocked in the parking lot? They asked me to fake a fight. Then, with a smile on his face, he punched the people who surrounded us to death and crippled them." Tiger's tone became urgent. Then he still looked at me with that smile and said in a gentle tone, "If you disappoint me one day, then I'll take back what I gave myself." Tiger looked up at Bok. "I once swore that I'd never disappoint him. I'd never face him with that smile." "You didn't do anything," Bok said. "Plus, he doesn't have evidence, right?" Tiger smiled bitterly at Bok. "Do you think he's the kind of person who needs evidence?" Bok's expression turned cold. "Since he doesn't want to reason with us, we don't need to reason with him either. Don't worry, leave this to me." "Bok, don't use extreme methods. You'll anger him." "Tiger, you don't understand me or my company." Bok patted Tiger's shoulder. "You can be a big star without worry. No one can threaten my client." The more Bok said this, the more worried Tiger was. Qin Zhao had never thought that the big boy would become a real bad guy. Qin Zhao's impression of Tiger was still that of a shy, introverted boy who was always passionate about the ring and thirsted for victory. This change was too sudden. Qin Zhao was still in a daze. West had helped him investigate a lot of information about Tiger. Hiring prostitutes were a personal problem. Qin Zhao could ignore it. There was also the emotional entanglement between him and his ex-girlfriend, which could only be said to be a personal issue. Even if he beat up his ex-girlfriend, Qin Zhao would at most call the police instead of getting involved himself. However, he couldn't accept that Qin Zhao had gotten some information from his ex-girlfriend. That was no longer just a matter of touching the bottom line of morality. If it were in China, it would be enough to be executed several times. As the saying goes, men become bad when they have money. Tiger was the best example. To put it bluntly, he had become arrogant after becoming famous. Moreover, it was the kind that drifted too far. Qin Zhao felt that it was already too much for rich people to reveal their identities and throw a stack of cash at ordinary people. However, he had clearly underestimated Tiger. Tiger was completely different from Ford and Evely. Rufford's career had its ups and downs. But after meeting Qin Zhao, his career skyrocketed. Coupled with the environment he grew up in and the stability of his family, Rutherford's mentality had always been good. Moreover, he often communicated with Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao didn't have much to teach him in terms of technique. However, Qin Zhao could still guide him in terms of training and nutrition. Perhaps Rufford also got arrogant sometimes, but he could control himself. Evely was different. Her family background had always been extraordinary. She had received elite education since she was young. Now she was the most famous athlete in the sports world. It was just another way for her to succeed other than inheriting her family business. Thus her mentality was the best. She also kept in touch with Qin Zhao. Tiger was different. In the past he had felt inferior. Now he was as arrogant as he was arrogant. After being repressed for a long time, once a person found an outlet they would go crazy. It wasn't that poor kids couldn't become rich overnight. If only someone had been able to guide them back then. Tiger wouldn't have become like this. However proud Qin Zhao was of Tiger in the past, he hated him now. Right now, Qin Zhao's mentality was, I raised him so I'll destroy him with my own hands. Moreover, Qin Zhao wanted to destroy him in all aspects. Don't talk to Qin Zhao. He was still a kid. Plus he could still be saved. He just lacked guidance. A mistake was a mistake. He could make other mistakes and still have a chance to redeem himself. But some mistakes couldn't be undone. Tiger had committed 2 unforgivable crimes. One was drunk driving and killed a mother and daughter. Then, to avoid responsibility, he let someone else take the blame. The husband of the mother and daughter's family hanged himself half a month later. At least, the police concluded that it was suicide. But Qin Zhao didn't think so. Tiger had been in frequent contact with gangs for a while. Therefore, the media often saw this kind of news, and the territory of the gang he was associated with happened to be near the neighborhood where the man who hanged himself lived. The second crime was that he had violated a woman. That night, the woman and her family were all buried in a fire. The first crime was from West's investigation, and the second was from a few words from Tiger's ex-girlfriend. Qin Zhao had also been to the scene of the fire. At the same time, he'd gotten the report from the fire station. The report showed that someone had indeed set the fire on purpose. But there were no clues about the suspect. Qin Zhao wasn't a judge, so he never needed evidence. Most of the time, judges didn't pursue justice but the law. But the original purpose of humans' creation of law was to uphold justice. In court, if a person was known to be guilty of a heinous crime, but there was no evidence to prove that he was guilty, could he not be sentenced? This was a philosophical question. Qin Zhao wasn't a philosopher. He couldn't explain whether he should uphold justice or the law. He only knew that he should do what he had to do. As the saying went, it was up to God to decide if you were guilty or not. Qin Zhao was only responsible for sending you to God. But one thing Qin Zhao was sure of was that Tiger couldn't see God. Just then Qin Zhao received a call. It was from a stranger. Hello, is this Mr. Qin? Who is it? Qin Zhao didn't like strangers who pretended to be mysterious. They would instinctively make others hostile like Qin Zhao. Chapter 2451. I'm Madeko Pavich. How may I help you? Mr. Qin, can you please stop being a busybody? It's for the good of your former disciple and for you and your family. You've investigated me, right? How much do you know about me? Ha. Madeko Pavich chuckled. Rich, very rich. What else? Seems like my investigation isn't comprehensive enough. There's still something I haven't found out. Madeko Pavich smiled, but he didn't take it to heart. But please understand that some power can't be compensated with money or the power behind you. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you can show me what power money can't compensate for. I hope you won't regret it. I'll say the same to you. Didi, after school go home with your siblings, Qin Zhao informed Didi. Didala was the oldest of the kids and he was a steady person. Qin Zhao trusted him. Uncle, we've been at school for a few days. You're only concerned about our safety today? Don't tell me you've made some new enemies recently? Asked Didira speechlessly. That's the essence of the word. Which warrior is it? To Didi, anyone who dared to go against his uncle was definitely a warrior, especially someone who dared to threaten his family. Even the word warrior wasn't enough to describe their bravery. He hoped that there would be no war in heaven. After informing Didira, Qin Zhao called West. West, what are Helis and Jalanash doing these days? Helis just came out of the Tower of Trials. She seems to have made some progress on level 4. She seems to have a good chance of passing it, West said. West said, Jalanash should still be in the city. He went shopping with Giselle. Where are they shopping? Beverly Street. Perfect. Tell her to go to Angel Beach. Someone might want to harm my family. I'm afraid that Feilai will be in danger. Also, tell Helis to go to Mountain Elementary and secretly protect my kids. Guild leader, who is it? West immediately lowered his voice. I don't know yet. There's a guy called Madeko Pavich. I don't know his background yet. There are still a few kids at home. I can't leave, so I can only ask Jalanash and Halis to protect them. Guild leader, if we encounter an ambush I can kill all the enemies, right? Of course, Qin Zhao replied. Okay, I know what to do. Halis hung up the phone. This basically gave Helith the power to fire as many times as she wanted. As long as he was judged as an enemy, she had the right to execute him. Normally, Qin Zhao wouldn't give him such authority. One reason was that Helith was even more murderous than Qin Zhao. On the other hand, some people didn't necessarily deserve to die. However, this was a special time. Because someone claimed to be threatening his family. At this time there was no time to distinguish between death and death. As for Jalanash on the other side, Qin Zhao didn't even need to say anything. If a normal person forced Jalanash to attack Nash, Qin Zhao wouldn't even need to say anything. In that case, the result would be no different from firing limitlessly. If Jalanash's elemental magic hit an ordinary person, it would be like being hit by a missile. Kids, do you remember me? Sister Helith. Didala was the first to recognize her. Helith forced a strange smile with difficulty. Not bad, you still remember me. But Illich, Binance, Farintia and Kilo all remembered Helith too. He remembered this little sister who was full of Gothic style. Helith's style was too obvious and left a deep impression on them. But Hallie's was also the type that came with a lightning rod. Not to mention children, even adults would automatically keep a respectful distance from her. Even when facing Qin Zhao's kids, Helith only smiled perfunctorily. Your uncle told me to take you home, Helith said. Let's go. Get in my car. The kids looked at Helith's car. It was an expensive Lincoln Navigator. But what really caught their attention wasn't the car's price. Instead, it was the super personalized paint on the car. There were 7 pictures. They were the 7 disasters. Pain, disease, suffering, torture, plague, death, and despair. Each picture was fully integrated with the elements of death and terror. In particular, the paint used in some places was very special. It was a fluorescent coating. For example, the picture on the back of the car was the plague sermon. If someone shone a beam at Helith's car from the back, they would definitely see a strange scene. Hi Feilai. Jalanash came to the Coastal Rescue Team's headquarters. Jalanash, why are you here? Feilai saw Giselle behind Jalanash and greeted her as well. Because she often went to the supernatural organization, she was basically familiar with the people there. The president asked me to protect you. Huh. Is that necessary? I can't help it. As a spiritualist family, I often get involved in some unnecessary trouble with my family. Jalanash shrugged helplessly. There were rules in the spiritual world that people might not be able to protect their family. But sometimes, it wasn't that people wanted things to escalate. It was just that things got out of control. Jolene, Nash, and Giselle sent Feilai home safe and sound. As soon as they got out of the car, Haris arrived in her cool and strange car. When they arrived, Qin Zhao had already prepared a scrumptious dinner in the yard. Everyone, including Giselle, was asked to stay for dinner. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't just ask them to stay for dinner. In the next few days, they would probably stay with Fei Lai to work and escort Qin Zhao's children to and from school. Qin, what's going on? Fei Lai asked at the dining table. Qin Zhao rarely arranged for people from the supernatural organization to protect his family. Qin Zhao told her about Tiger. Tiger? How did that kid become like this? President, if you need, I can send that guy to God for you. Qin Zhao glanced at Helith. No need. That's not my plan. It was very easy to destroy a person physically. For Qin Zhao, Helith and Jalanash it wasn't difficult at all. A spell could solve it. But Qin Zhao didn't just want to kill Tiger. It wasn't simply justice. It was revenge. Chapter 2452. A passenger plane landed at Los Angeles Airport. A dozen strangely dressed passengers walked out of the exit. They looked like they walked out of the Hogwarts Academy in the movie Harry Potter. Of course, the way others looked at them was as if they were cosplaying as Hogwarts magicians. They were already used to this kind of look. So they looked calm and they responded to other people's requests to take photos with them. When they walked out of the exit, someone went up to them. Hamson. Mr. Medico Pavich, may the immortal king bless you. Among the group of Hogwarts mages, an old man looked at the person who greeted them. It's a pleasure for you to visit. Medico Pavich looked at Hamson Deller. They were all real mages. Although they did not come from Hogwarts Academy. But magic existed in this world. All kinds of unimaginable magic shocked Medico Pavich when he first came into contact with them. It was then that Medico Pavich came into contact with the group of mages from England and got to know them. They came from an organization called the Immortal Crown, an extremely ancient organization. But although they were ancient, they were very poor. And because of the lack of funds, their members dwindled. Until Medico Pavich provided them with funds. Their precarious life was finally alleviated. Of course, Medico Pavich did not help them unconditionally. When Medico Pavich needed help, they would also need to help him solve any problems he faced. The group of mages who had long been afraid of poverty did not care about the rules of the spiritual world. Perhaps they did not realize that they had been controlled by Medico Pavich from the very beginning. Now they even relied on the money provided by Medico Pavich for their daily necessities. Of course, even if they realized this problem, they did not want to go back to the past. When Medico Pavich first came into contact with them, they lived in the depths of a forest that was rarely visited by humans. There were 52 of them when Medico Pavich unwittingly broke into their hideout. They were psychics who hid in the mountains to avoid World War II in the last century. Most of them were second or third generation and a few were fourth or fifth generation. Initially there were a few hundred spiritualists. However, after decades of reproduction, not only did they not grow stronger, but their numbers were also decreasing. It was mainly because they had too little contact with the outside world. Their daily necessities were basically grown and bred by themselves. Their only means of transportation was an old car from the 1930s. They had not been in contact with the outside world for decades. Their knowledge was seriously out of touch with the outside world. They had almost returned to primitive society before Medico Pavich had entered the forest in which they lived. Due to the lack of living resources and poor medical standards, they could only rely on magic to cure all of their illnesses. However, most of the time magic could not cure all diseases. Take appendicitis for example. In the outside world, a small surgery could solve the problem. But there, it was a fatal disease. They had no idea what was going on outside. They still thought that the outside world was still in an era of war. This kind of understanding was not only out of touch but also a lack of knowledge. This caused them to be unable to survive alone even after Medico Pavich brought them out of the forest. Of course, another reason was that Medico Pavich deliberately made them think so in order to better control these magicians. All of their knowledge had already fallen behind decades of time. After all, the speed of development and changes in the past few decades were much greater than the development of human civilization in the past thousands of years. Especially since almost all of the first generation had passed away. Now there were not many of the second generation left. The incomplete inheritance of knowledge caused them to have an incomplete understanding of the outside world. As a result, they developed a sense of dependence on Medico Pavich. Medico Pavich easily controlled them. At least, most of the members of the Immortal Crown had become his servants. The older second and third generation were no longer willing to step out of their former seclusion. The fourth and fifth generation were even younger and more willing to see the outside world. Hamsun was the only second generation that came out with Mediko Pavic. However, he was already very old. He was already 85 years old. In fact, he was already born before his parents lived in seclusion. Compared to the others, he understood the outside world better. Of course, he yearned for the outside world more than the others. So, he could be considered a first generation. His magic power was the strongest among the other magicians. Hamsun knew that Mediko Pavic was using them. However, he did not care. Compared to the lack of resources and monotonous life in the seclusion, the outside world was much more interesting. There was also the guarantee of a stable life. Moreover, the tasks that Mediko Pavic gave them were very simple. "You guys are really eye-catching," Mediko Pavic said with a smile. "Although the outside world is much more interesting than the seclusion, I'm still more used to the robe of order." The magicians called their robes the robe of order. The robe of order was also a magic item that could provide them with magic power. Of course, for Hamsun and the others who had lived in seclusion for a long time, the robe of order gave them a sense of superiority. Perhaps due to the influence of the movies, when they appeared in public wearing the robe of order, they felt proud and honored. The fanaticism and adoration of ordinary people made them feel honored and proud. "What do you want us to do this time?" Hamsun asked. "Mr. Mediko, please give us some challenging tasks," a young magician of the fourth generation said with a somewhat arrogant tone. "Yes, I hope this task can be a little difficult. At least when we travel we will feel a little bit of pressure. Although I want to give you some challenging tasks, you guys are born extraordinary. Perhaps only saving the world will make you feel pressured." "Haha. Can you find us a task to save the world?" "Me too. But first we need to live a better life before saving the world." Chapter 2453. Mediko Pavic led everyone into the car. Then he took out a stack of photos. "These are your goals. Bring them all to me." "There are a few kids here," Hamsun said. "After this mission I'll provide you with at least a year's worth of funds. You should also have your own headquarters in the outside world. Don't you think so, Hamsun?" Hamsun thought for a while and nodded. "You're right." As for the question that made him hesitate before after Mediko Pavic stated his conditions, it wasn't that important anymore. "Rest for the night. Tomorrow I'll give you more information about your goals. Finish the mission as soon as possible. Then you can have fun here. I've already prepared mini projects for you." "Mr. Chin, do you really have a way to help my arms recover their strength?" Sinja asked hesitantly. Every time he asked his doctor when he would treat his arms, the doctor would reply that Qin Zhao would be in charge of his arms. All the attending doctors told him that Qin Zhao was in charge of treating his hands. They weren't in charge of treatment or examination. It seemed that the doctors in the hospital had blind confidence in Qin Zhao. He'd also learned from the doctors that Qin Zhao wasn't just rich. Not only was Qin Zhao rich, but he was also a doctor with incredible medical skills. Sinja didn't really want to believe it. Doctors could become rich, but they probably couldn't become very rich. At least this was his understanding. But then he thought of the contract Qin Zhao had given him. If Qin Zhao couldn't treat his arms, then the contract might cause Qin Zhao's investment to turn into a loss. Thus, Sinja was more willing to believe that Qin Zhao really had a way. Of course, hope was one thing, but reality was another. He was an athlete. He knew where the current bottleneck of medical technology was. He'd seen too many people in the same profession retire from the stage due to various injuries. For example, his current injuries. His arms felt like they'd been cut off. The neural networks in his arms had been cut open. There was technology to reattach arms, but it was similar to grafting or reconnecting a cable after it was cut off. If the cable was pulled with enough force, the reconnection point would definitely be the point where the cable was reconnected. The connection of the neural network was actually a regrowth, not a connection of the original neural network. This was also the reason why the arm and palm could not be as nimble as before even after the arm was reattached, even after rehabilitation training. There was also the fracture and reconnection of the bones, which was also unable to withstand the initial force. Because the crack had always been there, the nerve structure in the bones could not be completely repaired. Just because two pieces of iron were glued together didn't mean that they could become one. At least from a mechanical point of view, two pieces of iron were always 2 units of force, not one. Therefore, Syndicate had always been skeptical about whether Qin Zhao could cure him. Qin Zhao looked at the report in his hand. He already had a clear plan for Syndicate's treatment. He was no stranger to this. Tiger had suffered the same injury back then. The two were almost exactly the same. Physical healing methods and the perfect potion. In terms of physical treatment, it referred to surgery. "I'll arrange surgery for you tonight," Qin Zhao said. Of course, if possible, he didn't want to operate at night either. But the hospital's operating theaters were full. Usually, it had to be arranged at least a week in advance before it could be arranged. Qin Zhao's request to use the operating theater was too sudden. Qin Zhao had a good relationship with the director and the major shareholders. But he couldn't delay the surgery of the other people he'd arranged. Therefore, it was arranged at night. This time could be squeezed out. Without this relationship, it would be difficult to arrange. How much can my hands recover? According to my plan, of course, in the best condition. But when it comes to surgeries, no one can guarantee anything. Qin Zhao was confident, but it was too unrealistic. Therefore, Qin Zhao wouldn't give any promises. After arranging the things before and after surgery for Syndicate, Qin Zhao went to rest on a chair outside. Even a doctor wouldn't like the smell in the hospital. Especially since he hadn't worked in the hospital for a long time, the chemical smell in the corridor stimulated Qin Zhao's sense of smell. Sometimes having a sharp sense of smell was a burden. Just like animals, Qin Zhao had a new understanding of it. Since the evolution in the barren land, Qin Zhao's sense of smell had improved a lot. It still couldn't reach the super sense of smell of cats and dogs. But it still gave Qin Zhao a certain amount of trouble. If it was a normal smell, it would be fine. However, some smells were pungent. The pungent effect was also magnified by hundreds of times. For example, the smell in the hospital. Qin Zhao felt like he was soaking in a bathtub filled with medicine. Also, cats and dogs, for example, knew how to distinguish and block this kind of smell. But Qin Zhao didn't know. He couldn't block this sense of smell. Of course, while Qin Zhao couldn't block his sense of smell, his tolerance was stronger. He wasn't like cats and dogs whose sense of smell would collapse after being sprayed with perfume. At most, Qin Zhao would feel nauseous. Plus, the pungent smell could be blocked. Breathing fresh air outside would make him feel happy. Of course, the happiest thing was that two people had come to relieve his pressure. The two people had come to relieve his pressure. Two young people wearing magic robes appeared before Qin Zhao. It was as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know who they were. In his hand was a wizard's magic staff like those in the Harry Potter movies. "Sir, come with us." Qin Zhao raised his head and looked at the two young people. This pair of man and woman seemed to be a perfect match. "What's your name?" "I'm the Immortal Crown, Sark." "Arsini," the young woman said. Qin Zhao yawned. "Sit with me for a while." "Sir, we don't have time to waste with you." "You better." Arsini pointed her staff at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao reached out and snapped Arsenal's wand in an instant. "You." Arsini stared at her staff in shock. "Damn." Sark suddenly pointed the staff at Qin Zhao. Chapter 2454. Shape-shifting. Sark cast shape-shifting on Qin Zhao. Shape-shifting could be used on oneself or on others. Shape-shifting on others was very advanced, because one's own magic wouldn't resist oneself. But when used on others, there would be resistance. Even if one used it on a normal person, there was a high chance of resistance. As for using it on Qin Zhao's magic resistance had almost broken through the sky. His current magic resistance wasn't absolutely immune to magic. Basically, even an advanced spell wouldn't have any effect on him. Before Sark's magic could land on Qin Zhao, it had already dissipated into nothingness. Qin Zhao knew what was going on, but Sark didn't. Although he used shape-shifting, there was a certain chance of resistance. But he thought that his shape-shifting skill was almost perfect. Qin Zhao's resistance was just a coincidence, a result of luck. If a regular spiritualist mastered shape-shifting and cast it on a normal person, there was a 50% chance of resistance. But if it was Sark, he knew some tricks of shape-shifting. Thus, his shape-shifting had a 90% success rate on normal people. Just now, Qin Zhao had resisted shape-shifting because Sark had stepped on his shit. He felt that Qin Zhao wouldn't be so lucky the second time. If Qin Zhao knew what Sark was thinking, or if Sark himself had studied probability, he definitely wouldn't agree with Sark's opinion. It was like flipping heads and tails of a coin. In terms of probability, if you flipped heads the first time, it didn't mean that you would flip tails the second time. The probability of flipping heads the second time was still 50%. Shape-shifting. Qin Zhao still wasn't moved. You missed again? Again shapeshifting. 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 Suddenly, Qin Zhao stood up and covered Sark's mouth with one hand. Sit down, sit with me for a while or I'll break your jaw. Qin Zhao looked at Sark. Do you understand me? If you do, I'll let go. Sark nodded. But the moment Qin Zhao let go, Sark suddenly pointed at Qin Zhao. Blind. Pooh, Qin Zhao punched Sark's stomach. Sark was already kneeling on the ground, his body spasming slightly. Then Qin Zhao looked at Arsenal. Arsenal was too scared to move. These two were pure rookies. This was Qin Zhao's impression of them. Let's not talk about their strength first. At the very least, their reactions were too abnormal. Qin Zhao looked at the two. Sit down or I'll send you to the ward of this hospital. Both of them sat down obediently. Were you sent by Madek Pavich? The two of them remained silent. They seemed to think that this could negate the question. All right, I'll take that as a silent agreement. Do you know what a police officer's favorite way to interrogate a criminal is? Qin Zhao asked calmly. The two still didn't speak, but Qin Zhao chattered on. The police's favorite way of interrogation is to face two criminals, because for every question, if one of the criminals answers first, then his punishment will be reduced. In contrast, the second criminal's punishment will be increased accordingly. Qin Zhao looked at the two magicians who were sitting by his side obediently. He put his hands on their shoulders. So, next time when you answer my question, I hope you can be the first to answer. Sark and Arsenal lowered their heads, but they secretly exchanged glances. Clearly they weren't going to cooperate with Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao suddenly increased the strength of his hands. He grabbed their collarbones and pulled. Crack. With their screams, their collarbones were dislocated at the same time. Their left and right shoulders collapsed at the same time. You can refuse, but trust me. I'll make all your bones leave their original positions. Other than you, do you have any other companions? Qin Zhao asked. Crack. The two screamed again. There are 206 bones in a human body. This means that you can experience 206 dislocations. Sark and Arsenal's faces paled. They hadn't experienced much pain. They didn't know how to face pain. I'll ask again. Do you have any other companions? Yes. This time it was Arsenal who answered. Good, Qin Zhao said satisfied. This is a good start. Arsenal. Sark screamed even more painfully than before. This time Qin Zhao crushed Sark's bones. Worse punishment. How many of you are there? 18. This time Shaq's team leader replied. Sark's betrayal was even more justified. Arsenal was the one who betrayed them first. They were two immature kids. This was what Qin Zhao had learned from them. Basically, in less than 10 questions he had already figured out the color of their underwear today. West, come over to my side and bring two people back. Didn't you say that you'd let us go if we answered your questions? If you didn't force me to attack, I would have let you go, but you forced me to use violence. You lost your last chance. From the moment they'd appeared before Qin Zhao, he hadn't planned on letting them go. Only they'd naively believed Qin Zhao's words. They'd thought that Qin Zhao had really planned on letting them go. What a joke. These two were real information. With West in charge, he would definitely be able to obtain more valuable information. Why let them go now? It wouldn't be easy to find someone so easy to deal with. When they were sent to West's car, they wanted to resist again. But now they didn't even have the strength to lift their wands. Qin Zhao acted as if he'd done something insignificant. Qin Zhao had also lowered Madek Pavich's strength. He'd thought that Madek Pavich was a person from the supernatural world. To his disappointment, Madek Pavich was just a normal person. His personal development was also combined with Sark's and Arsenal's testimonies. It was obvious that he'd only developed after encountering the people from the Immortal Crown and through their supernatural power. Every time he encountered a problem he couldn't solve, he'd ask the Immortal Crown for help. The Immortal Crown clearly relied on Madek Pavich's funds. The Immortal Crown had been established after spiritualists who'd been living in seclusion came out. Their foundation was too shallow. One could even say that they had no foundation at all. They weren't like those more successful organizations who'd found a suitable direction after adapting for a long time. Secondly, the Immortal Crown's strength. They actually had about the same number of members as the supernatural organization. But their individual strength was a mystery. Even Qin Zhao couldn't tell what Arsenal and Sark meant by powerful. Chapter 2455. Although Sark and Arsenal were very weak, they were still very powerful. To the higher-ups of the Crown of Immortality, they described them as terrifyingly powerful. It was said that those powerful magicians had been cultivating non-stop for decades. He didn't have any contact with the outside world, so his daily routine was either cultivation or cultivation. Because of this, Qin Zhao couldn't judge how powerful the Crown of Immortality was. So he told West to be careful. "Hello Jalanash, it's me, Nar." Jalanash was sunbathing right now. She'd been with Feilai for the past 2 days. However, the past 2 days had been calm and peaceful. Nothing had happened. When Jolene and Nash had nothing to do, they would play on the shore or help Feilai out a little. If she met someone in trouble at sea, she would secretly use water magic to save them. Of course, she was still not used to the current pace of life. After all, she preferred to practice at the headquarters in the Tower of Trials. Although this kind of daily rhythm was very relaxing, but she couldn't be motivated. Jalanash was still surprised to receive a call from her sister. "Nar, what's up? Can't I call you if there's nothing?" "If there's nothing, I'm hanging up," Jalanash said without hesitation. 2 years ago she might have believed Nar's call. But in the past 2 years she'd been on missions half the time. Many of the quests weren't straightforward expeditions that could be completed by simply A+1. In fact, many missions required Jalanash to work her brain and think. As time went by, Jalanash gained more experience. She couldn't say she was very experienced, but at least she could hear some suspicions when talking to her sisters. No, I'll tell you," Nar said quickly, sounding a bit depressed. "Tell me what's up." Nar and Jalanash were sisters from the same clan. When they were young, they were like 2 big devils in the clan. Basically, wherever he talked about it, the chickens would fly and the eggs would be broken. So they were naturally close. But they hadn't contacted each other in the past 2 years. It wasn't because they weren't close. It was because Nar had become the focus of the clan and had been cultivating in seclusion. That was why they never contacted each other. Unlike Nar, Jalanash's talent was mediocre in the clan. That was why Jalanash left the clan as soon as she came of age. The elders in the clan did not object to her going out. After all, even if Jalanash didn't leave on her own, she would probably be chased out by the elders of the clan soon. On the surface, it was said that he was going out to gain experience, but in reality, the underlying meaning was that he did not want to keep idle people. When Jalanash received Nar's call, her first reaction was that Nar had come out of seclusion. However, from her tone it seemed like there was something else. "Jocelyn Nash, I missed you, so I decided to come and play with you." "There's nothing fun here," Jalanash replied lazily. "No, I know you're in Los Angeles. Everything is fun there," Immerse said firmly. "LA is fun, but do you have money?" Jalanash went straight to the heart of the matter. "You've been out for 3 or 4 years. You should have some money, right? You must have saved up a lot of money." "My money isn't for you to squander." Jalanash had been planning her own house recently. She had saved up quite a bit in the last 6 months. She saved at least half of her salary every month. She had also become a little miser. Plus, while her salary was high and she was of the highest class in the supernatural organization, her expenses were also high. However, her expenses were also very high. Although the association would provide some of the magic materials needed for training, there were still many that she had to collect herself. Moreover, as her strength increased, the expenses she needed to spend would also increase. Anar was the opposite of her because his family was much better than Jalanash's. That was why she had no concept of money since she was young. Did Uncle Owens come too? The Uncle Owens that Jalanash mentioned was Nar's father. "No, I don't want to talk about him." "You fought with Uncle Owens." "I ran away from home. If he doesn't take me in, then I'll really be homeless." Jalanash couldn't help but worry. She wasn't worried that Nar would really be homeless. She was worried that there was no one around her. Who knew what she would do? "Nar, where are you now?" "Guess." Suddenly, Jalanash felt a familiar magic wave around her. Jalanash bounced up from the beach chair and looked behind her. "Hi, Jalanash." Jalanash finally found Nar. Nar was much shorter than Jalanash. She looked less than 160 centimeters. She looked like an underage girl with a baby face. In fact, she was the same age as Jalanash. She just had a different birthday. "Nar, how did you know I was here?" Jalanash looked at Nar, who was bouncing over. "Because we're sisters. We can communicate telepathically," Anar said proudly. Jalanash didn't believe her. You know detection spells? Jalanash asked, looking surprised. Because all of her race practiced elemental magic. It wasn't that there were no other types of magic, but they were at least very rare. On the other hand, detection magic was a more advanced type of magic. She doubted that Enyar would learn this kind of magic. Or would her race let her waste time on other types of magic? No, guess again. I can't. Jalanash wasn't interested in guessing anymore. I've activated the bloodline, Enyar said proudly. Nar said proudly, now as long as I want to, I can find the location of everyone who has the blood of our race flowing in their veins. You've really activated it? Does our race really have such an ability? Jalanash knew about it. It was called kindred inheritance in the race. But she doubted if such an ability really existed. In fact, it wasn't just her. Most people in the race doubted if such an ability really existed. Yes, I'm the only person in the past 300 years who has awakened the kindred inheritance ability. That's nothing to be proud of. After all, this ability can't increase one's strength. Who said it can't? My magic power is more than 10 times stronger than before. It's easier for me to communicate with the elements. I only need half of my magic power to release a spell of the same level. Oh, that's not bad. Not bad? In your words, it's not bad? Enyar said loudly. I'm at least in the top 10 in the race. My dad said that I can become the most powerful elemental mage in the race in 10 years. Chapter 2456. Jalanash wasn't the little girl from 10 years ago who would argue with Enyar endlessly. She only laughed at Enyar's arrogance. Nor did Enyar continue to discuss the issue with Jolene and Nash. Is there a shopping street here? Yes, it's over there. I'm not talking about the ordinary ones. I'm talking about the high-end ones. If you want to go to Beverly Hills, I can find you a guide. Come with me and pay for me, Wang Yao said. Jalanash rolled her eyes. I'm on a mission. Mission? Well, you. Enyar looked at Jalanash, who was only wearing a swimsuit, shorts and a sun hat. Was she on a mission? What mission are you on? Protector, Jalanash said. It's okay. It's okay to go away for a while. I can just reject this mission. Am I not as important as a mission? Enyar shook Jalanash's hand. Jalanash glanced at Enyar. She was considering if she should tell her the truth. In Jalanash's heart, this childhood playmate was indeed a good sister. But she had to give up the mission just to shop with her. This was definitely impossible. If you stay in Los Angeles long enough after I complete this mission, I can apply for a few days off to play with you in Los Angeles or the surrounding cities for a few days. But I can't just give up my current mission. Jalanash, you don't love me anymore. Enyar hugged Jalanash, acting like a spoiled child. Don't do that. I need to focus on the mission. Fine. Who's your client? Not my client. My boss's wife. Is she a spiritualist? No, she's a regular person. So troublesome. How about I kill your boss and you'll be free? This joke isn't funny at all. Jalanash knew that Enyar was joking. But she couldn't laugh at all. If Qin Zhao heard this, he would probably die. If Qin Zhao heard this, he'd slap Enyar onto the wall. Although he hadn't seen Nar for a few years, her personality was still the same as a few years ago. Perhaps the days of closed-door training were too harsh. As a result, after Nar came to Los Angeles, he became even more self-indulgent. Enyar, don't casually use magic in Los Angeles, especially on ordinary people. It's very dangerous here. What kind of danger is there in this magical desert? Nar said indifferently. If you continue to have this kind of attitude, then I can only tie you up and throw you into the clan. All right. Enyar had compromised, but she didn't believe that Jalanash could kidnap her. She was just worried that if she pissed off Jolene Nash, she wouldn't be able to play with her. However, she was still stubborn and unruly in her bones. But Jalanash still arranged for Enyar to go shopping. Nal said that he only wanted to go to Beverly Hills, but when he went to this ordinary commercial street, he still couldn't help but linger. After all, even if this was just an ordinary commercial street, it was still much more lively than the clan's gathering place. However, Enyar had spent more than $2,000 in one afternoon, which still made Jalanash's heart ache. Even if she went shopping in Beverly Hills, she might not even spend $2,000 in a day. When Enyar came back, she was already carrying more than 20 shopping bags. Women had a natural obsession with shopping. Jalanash, look at what I bought. Look at this pair of earrings. It's only $50. It's so worth it. Jalanash looked at the exquisite box that Nair took out. It was a pair of silver earrings. Most of the time, such silver jewelry wouldn't cost more than $20. This made Jalanash feel that she had to send her home as soon as possible. Just then Phalai walked over. Phalai had already changed back into her own clothes. Jalanash, is she your friend? Phalai, are you off work? Jalanash looked at Phalai and then at Nair. She's my sister, Nair. She just left home. This pair of earrings is so beautiful. Which store did you buy it from? At this moment, Phalai displayed her high EQ. You think it's beautiful too, don't you? Nair immediately liked Phalai. She felt that her beauty sense had been recognized. To her, this was the greatest affirmation. Of course, it's very beautiful. How about we go shopping? I want a pair of earrings too. Jalanash wasn't stupid. Phalai's attitude clearly showed that she wanted to build a good relationship with Nair. Otherwise, why would she want to buy such jewelry? Phalai wasn't allowed to wear jewelry during work hours. Moreover, her jewelry was basically all high-end goods. Even if she went to events with Qinzhao, she would only wear jewelry that cost tens of thousands of dollars or more. Phalai and Nair looked like mother and daughter. It wasn't because of their age or appearance difference. It was because of the difference in their intelligence. Because she was shopping, Phalai missed dinner time. However, Phalai had already called Qinzhao. The three girls had a lot of fun outside. Then Jalanash sent Phalai to her house and took Nair back to her place. Wow, Jalanash, is this your house? When did you buy it? So beautiful. I rented it, not bought it. Jalanash rolled her eyes. Such a luxurious house must be very expensive, right? Jalanash covered her face. I'll prepare daily necessities for you. When they were at Mingyue Villa, Nair had also made a big fuss as if he hadn't seen the world. Now that he saw his house, he also made a big fuss. Nair, your house is so many times bigger than mine. Do you have to be like this? I don't want to talk about that rundown house. I feel like I'm moldy after living there for so long. Actually, Nair's house was far from rundown. It was a manner that wasn't inferior to Mingyue Villa. Of course, Nair's main criticism was that the style couldn't keep up with the times. Most of the decorations were designed and built in the early 19th century. Girls like Nair, of course, preferred modern-style interior decorations. Jalanash was similar. Perhaps influenced by Qin Zhao's two manners, Jalanash's taste was more modern. This villa was rented by her, but her plan was to buy a villa that belonged to her. Or she could buy a piece of land and build her own house like Qin Zhao. Chapter 2457. Jalanash actually had a very clear plan for her life. In terms of personal ability, she'd always set Qin Zhao as her goal and tried her best to catch up. Even though Qin Zhao gave her despair, she wasn't discouraged. However, she was not discouraged because of this. After all, the process of catching up was actually very interesting. Her path in terms of personal ability was basically very clear. There was also her own financial management. Jalanash even went to Alex for advice. Alex couldn't understand Jalanash either. Jalanash had a high income, but she didn't have a stable job. That kind of income was obviously not a regular income. He got close to $100,000 every month. This was the income of a top-notch lawyer. But Jalanash clearly wasn't a lawyer. Alex even suspected that Jalanash was a high-class prostitute. But when she remembered that Qin Zhao had introduced her, she dispelled the thought. Alex drew up a property plan for Jalanash. However, Jalanash's loan was a bit troublesome. She had a high income, but she didn't have any proof of work. To the bank's appraiser, such people were probably involved in some illegal activities and could lose their income at any time. But this was a small problem. Qin Zhao was happy to lend Jalanash the money. You can stay here for the time being, but I have a rule. You can't use magic in my house. No magic at all. They got it. Hey Qin, I've finished using your Mirror Lake Manor. I've also cleaned up the set. The crew has all left. Qin Zhao said. If you need me again, let me know in advance. Or I'll return the key to you. James borrowed Qin Zhao's house for 2 days. In fact, the filming took less than a day, but the construction and dismantling of the set as well as the cleaning of the house took more time. As for the key Qin Zhao had given him, he couldn't use it at all. Because Qin Zhao had given him the authority of the butler system, he could move around the manor without any obstruction. Even if he wanted to go to Qin Zhao's wine cellar, he couldn't stop him. James had entered the wine cellar. The collection inside was estimated to be worth no less than $200 million on the market. On the other hand, Qin Zhao could give him so much authority without any supervision. One could imagine how much trust Qin Zhao had in him. "Keep it with you," Qin Zhao said. "I'm a bit busy these days. You can ask your assistant to come and get it. She's been taking care of my kids for the past 2 days," Qin Zhao said helplessly. "If I make her run errands again, she'll turn against me." "Haha. You can get another assistant." "I did, Mr. James." "Sorry, Portia, you misheard." Because of Qin Zhao, James and Portia were quite close. James also arranged a small role for Portia, who had dreams of becoming a star. His evaluation was that she was not suitable for acting. From then on, Portia never mentioned acting in front of Qin Zhao again. However, Qin Zhao knew that Portia still secretly went to some auditions. Of course, if she didn't tell the people auditioning that she knew Stephen and James, no one would give her the role. In the morning, after Jalanash and Anyar came to pick Fei Lai up, Qin Zhao also went to the hospital. The house was left to Portia. Of course, Portia would also take care of the little devil kings at home. To prevent Madeko Pavich's men from causing trouble, Qin Zhao had all the pets in the house be on guard. As long as he wasn't home, they would be responsible for the manor's safety. Apart from Briar, Bramble, Simba, and Nana, the other pets were all powerful. Even an expert might not be able to leave this place in one piece. When he reached the hospital, he found Four in Syndicate's ward. "Hey Four, why are you here? This isn't the department you're in charge of, right?" Four was a doctor in internal medicine while this was a surgery department. "I can't help it. I owe a few surgeons here. They asked me to come and collect Syndicate's postoperative data." Qin Zhao had only volunteered for a few surgeries, but the surgeons here were all shocked by Qin Zhao's skills. However, they were too embarrassed to come and collect Syndicate's data. They were even afraid of causing unnecessary misunderstandings. So they could only find Four. They all knew that Four was Qin Zhao's sister-in-law. To them, Qin Zhao wouldn't think that his sister-in-law wanted to steal his patient. "Tell them to be more generous next time," Qin Zhao said, pretending to be generous. "They want to observe my patient," Qin Zhao said, pretending to be generous. "I won't chase them away." "Beautiful doctor, how's my current situation?" Syndicate felt that he was recovering well. However, he wasn't sure if it was just his imagination. The feeling was very vague. When he used a bit of force, it would affect the pain nerves in his arm. It was a very strong pain. Nevertheless, pain was a good thing. The more painful it was, the better the connection between the nerves was. "You're in great condition," Four said. "But you'll have to ask your main doctor for the details. Drink this." Qin Zhao handed Syndicate a bottle of diluted perfect medicine. "Did you make another bottle like this?" Four watched as Qin Zhao handed her the black, slightly murky potion. It wasn't the first time she saw Qin Zhao give this black medicine to a patient. She didn't know what it was. She only knew that every time Qin Zhao gave this medicine to a patient, the patient's bodily functions would greatly speed up and recover. Or it could suppress the illness. She tried it before. She'd extracted the remaining ingredients from the empty bottle and tested it. However, the results were always disappointing. The ingredients that could be detected were all very ordinary. The ones that couldn't be detected at all. Four had also tried to persuade Qin Zhao to get a patent. The profits would be much greater than if he made and used it alone. However, Qin Zhao always told her that this medicine required some special ingredients. Modern medicine production lines couldn't produce it. Four felt that it was a pity, but she didn't have any more reason to persuade Qin Zhao. She also knew that Qin Zhao was very rich. Syndicate took the potion and drank it immediately. "Four, go out for a while. I need to give him a special treatment," Qin Zhao said. "Can't I watch from the side? I need to use Eastern witchcraft. Bystanders will be cursed." Chapter 2458. Even though Four knew that Qin Zhao was joking, she still left. Syndicate also thought that Qin Zhao was joking. However, he was in a good mood right now, even though his arm hurt a lot. The more painful it was, the happier he was. Anesthetics could reduce the pain, but he enjoyed the current pain more. Only pain could make him feel the existence of his arm. For example, he had broken bones and damaged nerves. If he lost his sense of pain, it would be like losing his arm. But when he saw the set of silver needles, Syndicate still shivered. He'd heard of acupuncture before, but he didn't believe in it. Comparatively, he was more willing to believe in Western medicine. But Qin Zhao wasn't discussing it with him. Soon, Syndicate's arm was filled with silver needles. Each needle contained a sliver of life force. At first, Syndicate resisted. But as the life force seeped into Syndicate's arm, he felt the pain in his arm gradually disappear. It was replaced by a strange feeling of comfort. It was a very special feeling. Qin Zhao moved quickly. After all the life force of a needle flowed into Syndicate's arm, he immediately took out another needle. After replacing hundreds of needles for Syndicate, Qin Zhao finally stopped. Then he put the needles away one by one. After finishing, Qin Zhao started applying medicine to Xion's wound. Syndicate didn't feel any pain anymore. His fingers seemed to have recovered their usual nimbleness. "Mr. Qin, when will my injuries heal?" Syndicate finally stopped doubting Qin Zhao's abilities. 2 days, Qin Zhao said. Hearing Qin Zhao's answer, Syndicate felt strange. On one hand, he felt that his injuries were almost healed. On the other hand, he doubted whether 4 or 5 days could really help him recover. Qin Zhao already had a plan for Syndicate's treatment and recovery. The most troublesome part of the surgery was already done. So the next step was recovery treatment. On the other hand, recovery healing was dispensable. If he wasn't in a hurry, Syndicate could completely recover in a month even if he stopped treatment now. But Qin Zhao clearly didn't want to wait a month. That was why he used life force to treat Syndicate. In other words, I can see my daughter in 2 days, right? Yes, but she's currently isolated in a sterile ward. Other than specialized nurses, no one else is allowed to enter the sterile ward. Hinga's daughter is different from Hinga. Although Syndicate's injuries were severe, they weren't fatal. His daughter, on the other hand, had a heart transplant. On top of that, she was still young, her body was weak, and her resistance was much weaker than that of an adult. Therefore, they couldn't let outsiders enter the ward at this time. I understand. Although Syndicate was grateful for Qin Zhao's treatment, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Chen." However, he went to the market more because Qin Zhao had helped his daughter. There's no need. I'm only helping your daughter because you're worth investing in. Mr. Qin, don't worry. I won't lose to Tiger again. I won't lose to anyone. Even if you recover, you're still no match for Tiger. I was careless that day. Qin Zhao shook his head. He had seen the video that the paparazzi had taken that day. Tiger's power was clearly beyond the norm. He had strengthened Tiger before. However, he was at most 1.5 times stronger than other people. He was far from being able to send Syndicate flying with one punch. After all, Syndicate was also a boxer. He wasn't famous, but his abilities and techniques were at the level of a top boxer. How could Tiger do that? He could kill Syndicate in one move. Syndicate's face reddened. He wasn't convinced. However, he couldn't prove that he was indeed KO'd by Tiger that day. Since you don't believe me, why did you save me? It's not easy to find someone who can keep up with Tiger in terms of technique and foundation in such a short time, especially someone who can be controlled by me and is willing to be controlled by me, Qin Zhao said without hiding it. You're weaker than him. There's no doubt about that. Syndicate wasn't convinced, but he didn't want to argue with Qin Zhao now. Right now, Qin Zhao could even be said to be his bread and butter. Arguing with Qin Zhao might not bring him any good results. Of course, I have my own plan. Bok, how's it going? Is it done? Tiger had been feeling uneasy these few days. The pressure Qin Zhao gave him was too great. Don't worry. My boss has already taken over. He's very good at this. There's nothing he can't solve. But it's been so many days. Why hasn't there been any news? Maybe to my boss this is an insignificant thing. Even if it's done, he won't tell us. Bok was very confident in Mediko Pavic. This confidence was built up through Mediko Pavic's ruthless methods time and time again. It seemed that no one could fight against him. It didn't matter if they were businessmen, celebrities, or gangsters. He even seemed to have ways to deal with people in politics. Tiger didn't know Mediko Pavic, so he wasn't as confident as Bok. Then help me ask. Tiger was both hopeful and worried. Okay, I really don't know what to do with you. Bok picked up his phone and called Madaik Pavic. Hello, Mr. Madaik. This is Bok. Tiger has been nagging me. Although I've been telling him that there's no problem that can't be solved by you, Tiger is still worried. So he asked me to call you and ask if there's any progress on that matter. I haven't gotten any news yet, but my best subordinate is in charge of this. I'll let you know when I get an answer. Hey, thank you, Mr. Medico. After hanging up, Bach pursed his lips. He'd just promised Tiger so confidently. But in the blink of an eye, he'd been slapped in the face. Medico Pavich still hadn't made any progress. Bach glanced at the eager Tiger. Things are going well. You'll get good news soon. Tiger's heart skipped a beat. Bach's words made him panic. The indescribable uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. No, he couldn't just sit here and wait. He had to think of a way to save himself. Tiger avoided Bach's gaze. He lowered his head and his eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 2459. Tiger thought about it for a long time. Should he ask Bach for help? Forget it. If he did, he would have to tell his boss again. In the end, nothing would come of it. Tiger decided to do it himself. After more than a year of development, he now had a little bit of his own contacts. After Bach left, Tiger picked up his phone and dialed a number. Hey Dolores, it's me, Tiger, Tiger said. You haven't come to my house in a while. I have a party tonight. Do you want to come? You're a big star. Are you sure you want to invite a gang to your house? I don't care who you are. I only know you're my friend. Oh, it's exactly because we're friends that I can't go, Dolores said brightly. But you can come to my bar anytime. Don't worry, there won't be any paparazzi here. Tiger went with the flow and said to Dolores, as long as you don't mind me giving you trouble. Oh, I'm more than willing to have a big star at my bar. Then I'll go tonight. Don't you have a party tonight? You're the only important guest. If you don't come, there's no need for the party. Dolores wasn't overjoyed. Instead, he realized that Tiger didn't really want to invite him to the party. He had something to ask of him. Dolores's lips curled into a smile. Of course, he had no reason to reject Tiger's request. After nightfall, Tiger drove his luxurious car to Dolores's bar. Dolores's bar was on Mingo Avenue. Mingo Avenue was the place people didn't want to talk about the most in LA. There were a total of 12 communities, all of which were dominated by black residents. Although Americans shouted for equality and freedom every year, this society was still based on white supremacy. People of other skin colors were mostly at the bottom here, especially Americans. Most of the other races here were still at the bottom. It was because of poverty, the chaotic environment, and the generally low education level that they had fewer choices. If the social status, population, and education of black people were switched with white people might not necessarily be good people. If the social status, population, and education of black people were to be swapped with that of white people might not necessarily be good people. Mingo Avenue was also the area with the most gangs and the most active illegal activities in the entire Los Angeles. All the gangsters here were mainly black. Even the wild boar King Morgary, known as the Underground King of Los Angeles, could not extend his tentacles into this area. This was because this place repelled foreign powers, or it could be said that it repelled the powers of other skin colors. This was not the rejection of a single gang, but the rejection of hundreds of thousands of black people. No matter how powerful Morgary was, it was impossible for him to fight against hundreds of thousands of black people. It was like if a foreigner went to China and found a place to say that he wanted to be the boss here, he would either get rolled eyes or handcuffs. Of course, the gang's influence on Minge Avenue was only limited to Minge Avenue. They were fighting here, fighting for territory, and the people they harmed were also the residents of Mingo Avenue. It was like an ecological chain. The residents here rejected foreign forces, including foreign investments. Then they formed local gangs. The local gangs poisoned the local residents. The local residents did not have enough jobs and education, so they could only become members of the local gangs. This was a vicious cycle, but it was also a cycle with no solution. Dolores was the leader of a local gang. Tiger also walked out of a neighborhood on Mingo Avenue. There were very few gangsters like him who could walk out of the slums and become successful in their careers. But as a former member of this place, Tiger would never be able to escape his background. Therefore, when he contacted the local gangs, it was only natural for him to do so. After Tiger's car entered Mingo Avenue, he did not need to worry about the paparazzi following him. No entertainment reporters dared to follow him into Mingo Avenue. Even war reporters who changed careers to paparazzi did not dare to enter this area. There was once a paparazzi who followed a star who walked out of this area. The next day the paparazzi died on the street. This was definitely not a rumor. It had really happened. Tiger found Dolores's bar with ease. After he got out, he handed the car to a gangster wandering outside. At the same time he gave him $200 bills. "Before I come out, this car is yours. Don't break it." The gangster was overjoyed. He wanted to pounce on Tiger and kiss him. Of course, even though he had been a car thief before, he did not dare to steal Tiger's car directly. He knew the rules here. If he dared to do that, he would definitely have his entire family killed the next day. Tiger walked through the dim corridor. Loud black music kept coming from ahead. Then the light in front of them suddenly became bright and dark, and the music became noisy and noisy. Tiger pulled a bald guy over. "Where's your boss?" "In the private room above," the bald guy answered. Tiger stuffed another bill into the bald man's hand. He went up the stairs to the private room and pushed the door open. Under the dim light of the private room, a black man and 3 women were doing something indescribable. Dolores looked up at Tiger at the door. He was not angry or panicked. Instead, he waved. "My friend, you came at the right time." Tiger sat beside Dolores. Just then a woman knelt before him. Dolores pushed a glass of wine to Tiger. "Here, have a drink." Tiger raised the glass and drank. Under the stimulation of the alcohol, he felt even happier. Phew, Tiger and Dolores began toasting each other. Both of them were enjoying the pleasure of the wine and the women. After 3 rounds, Dolores got to the main topic. "Tiger, did you run into some trouble recently?" Tiger did not answer Dolores's question. He continued drinking. Dolores patted the woman's cheek. "Baby, you guys go out first. I'll talk to Tiger." The women in the room obediently left. Before they left, they even blew Tiger a kiss. "Tiger, don't worry. Nothing you say here will be heard outside." Tiger's eyes flashed. After a brief hesitation, he finally said, "Dolores, I need your help." A smile appeared on Dolores's face. A big fish had taken the bait. Chapter 2460. We're brothers. Just tell me if you need anything. Tiger gulped down another mouthful of alcohol. He'd drunk quite a bit, but his mind was still clear. Dolores's power wasn't small, but compared to Qin Zhao's, it was still not enough. Tiger didn't want to face Qin Zhao's anger directly, so he decided to change his target. "Dolores, you know the recent news, right? It's about me." "Of course." Dolores patted Tiger. "What? Is Syndicate still looking for trouble with you? I'll go kill him." "It's not that simple." Tiger shook his head. "As long as he's dead, there won't be any trouble. It's not that simple. Syndicate has a big shot protecting him." "Then I'll kill him too," Dolores said nonchalantly. "I'll just send a few more people." Tiger was shocked. "Please don't. Let Dolores send people to kill Qin Zhao? If it was that simple, he wouldn't have to worry." Box boss, Madeko Pavich, had gone to deal with Qin Zhao's family. But there was still no result. What good would Dolores get if he went? "Why? Do you think I can't beat that big shot?" "Dolores, you don't have to offend him. Whether you can beat him or not, it'll be a big problem." Dolores thought about it. Indeed, Tiger's enemy definitely wasn't a gang on Mingo Avenue. His power would be greatly weakened after leaving Mingo Avenue, so he wouldn't be so unrestrained. If he offended a gang leader outside, it would indeed bring him a lot of trouble. He might not be afraid, but just as Tiger said, if it turned into a gang war, it would attract the government's attention. That would be really big trouble. "Then what do you think we should do?" "Think of a way to kidnap Syndicate's daughter and use her to threaten him so that he'll give up on fighting me. There won't be a large-scale battle," Tiger said. Dolores thought for a while and nodded. "When we do it, don't be too flashy. It'll be troublesome if the media notices," Tiger said. He wasn't afraid of the media's attention. He was afraid of Qin Zhao's attention. Qin Zhao used Syndicate to show him his attitude. To Qin Zhao, Xin Zhao was a chess piece. Tiger's ultimate goal was to make Syndicate give up on revenge. As long as Syndicate was willing to give up on this idea, Qin Zhao would have no more pawns to use. But Qin Zhao didn't seem to want to do it himself. As long as he didn't make a move himself, he still had a chance. But if Qin Zhao found out that he had sent people to kidnap Syndicate's daughter, in that case, Qin Zhao might change his mind. Tiger's plan was to do as little as possible to make Qin Zhao give up on his original plan. If he apologized on his own, Qin Zhao might let bygones be bygones. Tiger clearly didn't know Qin Zhao's personality well enough to have such an idea. Mr. Hamson, is there any progress? Madiko Pavich dialed Hamson's number. This time Hamson's operation wasn't as clean as usual. Mr. Mayak, we seem to be in trouble. I sent 3 teams, one to deal with the target, and the other 2 to deal with the target's woman and child. The team dealing with the target's daughter and child discovered traces of a spiritualist beside them, so they haven't made a move yet. As for the team directly dealing with the target, I sent the most outstanding members of the younger generation, Shaq and Arsene Wenger, but the 2 of them have gone missing. I suspect that they've met with misfortune. Mr. Madiko, Hamson said coldly. You didn't say that we're dealing with spiritualists. I thought we were dealing with regular people. What? That Chinese guy is also in the same field? Madiko Pavich's expression changed. He didn't expect it either. He'd thought that the guy was rich. He didn't expect that the guy was also a spiritualist. Are there many spiritualists in the world? Not many, Hamson said. Very few. How strong is the guy? How strong can he be in this barren land of magic? Hamson sneered. He's from the east, but if he had some ability he wouldn't have come to this magic desert. So you're saying that he's nothing? I'm just surprised. It's not too much trouble for me, Hamson said. Hamson said, it's just calling back the younger generation and exchanging a few of the third generation. Then let's move quickly, Madek Pavich urged. But those third-generation people are too proud, Hamson said, troubled. I'm afraid they won't be willing to do it. Madiko Pavich was a bit unhappy. Wasn't he just asking for more benefits? If we can solve this, I'll add another 20%. Mr. Madiko, that's not what I mean. I really want the third-generation people to go, but they're really hard to control. Mr. Hamson, I know it's not easy for you, so I've decided to increase the funding by 50%. Thank you, Mr. Madiko. I'll try my best to convince them. All right, then I'll have to trouble you, Mr. Hamson. Madiko Pavich knew that Hamson had come out of his seclusion a few years ago. He was no longer as naive as he had been in the beginning. Moreover, he was no longer as helpless as he had been in the beginning. It was no longer possible for him to force them to be his dogs with just a few pieces of meat. It seemed that he had to find an opportunity to change the leader of Immortal Crown. Of course, he still had a use for him at the moment, so Madeko hid his thoughts in his heart. After hanging up, Hamson's face immediately turned gloomy. Madeko Pavich was already dissatisfied with his constant demands. It seemed that he needed to find a new backer after getting the benefits this time. But Los Angeles was a good place. There were many rich people here and it was much more fun than boring London. The most important thing was that the supernatural world here was too weak. It was not like England at all. When they left their seclusion they were targeted. No matter what they did, they were suppressed by the rules. Even the establishment of Immortal Crown had to be registered first. But Los Angeles did not have that feeling at all. No one came to talk to them about the rules here. Hamson felt that this was the most suitable place for Immortal Crown to develop. It seemed that he needed to recruit everyone here. Chapter 2461. Manor, go and bring this person back. Uncle Hamson, this man is our main target in Los Angeles, right? Didn't you ask Shaq and Arsene to take care of this? Manuel was Hamson's nephew and could be considered Hamson's trusted aide. Manuel's parents had passed away a long time ago. Hamson had raised Manuel himself. Moreover, even his magic was taught by Hamson step by step. There was a small accident. This Chinese should be a spiritualist too. Shaq and Arsene are missing. They've probably met with misfortune. Be careful. I don't trust the others. Got it, Uncle Hamson. Also, have you found anything about the thing I asked you to find out? I've heard about the local spiritualists in L.H., but none of them are doing well. Plus, the people here don't really believe in magic, so it's not easy to find a big fish, Marnia said. Uncle Hamson, are we really going to develop here? Why don't we move to a place with a better foundation in the spiritual world? Hamson naturally knew what Manuel was talking about. Why was North America a magic desert? It wasn't just because of the short history. It was also because of the social structure here. People preferred to believe in the power of money. That was why they didn't believe in ghosts and gods. If people didn't have faith, there were even fewer spiritualists who could awaken. But why did most of the descendants of spiritualists awaken? Because they knew about the existence of magic, it was easier for them to awaken. They even had their own ways and experiences. Coupled with the fact that they didn't believe it, it would be extremely difficult for any organization from the other world to take root here. Hamsun sighed. Do you think I don't want to? But most of the places in the spirit world that you mentioned have been occupied by other forces, and they've been developing for decades or even centuries. What right do you think we have to go there and fight for territory with them? Only in North America, where most of the other regions are still uninhabited, can we take root and sprout in such an environment. The Crown of Immortality was founded in London, but London's spiritual world was already saturated. Regardless of whether it was a group or an individual spiritualist, there were countless of them. Although the Crown of Immortality was registered in London, it couldn't find any room for development in London. Occasionally they would discover one or two newly awakened geniuses. Just as they were about to rope them in, they discovered that those awakened ones had already contacted other groups. If they continued waiting, the immortal crown would be like a newborn baby that would be strangled in the cradle before it could fully develop. That was why Hamsun wanted to find an ideal place to develop again. However, there was no such thing as an ideal place in this world. In this era, the spiritual world was actually a beneficiary of modern civilization. This was because in the past, there might have been a large area with no magic. Perhaps this place would never have a spiritualist set foot here. But in this era, as long as there were people, there would be spiritualists. There was a large flow of people in every region, and the mobility of spiritualists had also increased. It was no longer difficult to find another area with no magic. It was completely impossible. That was why Hamsun decided to develop in North America. Naturally, North America had to choose a city with the best economic conditions. In North America, Los Angeles, New York, and Washington were all very good places. At the very least, in terms of the level of development of the local area, even spiritualists would flock to these few internationally renowned metropolises. However, Washington was the political center of America. Coupled with the cautious attitude of the American authorities, it was difficult to allow an uncontrolled supernatural group to take root in Washington. There were also 2 or 3 large-scale supernatural groups in New York. If the Crown of Immortality went there, not to mention taking root, it would probably be expelled from New York. On the contrary, Los Angeles was unexpectedly suitable for Hamsun. Although the atmosphere here was a little bad, at least it gave him hope of developing and growing. If they relied on the marriage between spiritualists, the number of awakened descendants definitely wouldn't be enough. For example, when the previous generation lived in seclusion, there were hundreds of people. By the time the 5th generation came out, there were less than 100 people left. Therefore, people outside the group had to awaken and join to maintain the number of people in a supernatural group. Uncle Hamsun, we have 3 choices if we want to stay here and develop. Tell me about it. The first choice is to join the government, Manel said. Hamsun frowned. He didn't like to be in contact with the government. When they were in London, people from the government had taken the initiative to contact them, trying to make them part of the government. At that time, Hamsun had already considered it, but the people of the government gave them all kinds of intolerable conditions. That was the main reason why Hamsun planned to move. What else? A gang. We control a gang as a source of funding for the Crown of Immortality. It's risky, but as long as we hide it well, there's still room for maneuver. Hamsun wasn't very satisfied. Is there any other way? Find a businessman and become his helper, Manel said. But in order to provide us with sufficient funds and opportunities for development, we need a big businessman, Marnia said. Although the Crown of Immortality had chosen fewer than 100 people, their expenses were actually not small. Plus, their plan was to stay in Los Angeles, which would cost at least tens of millions of dollars. To be under the command of a big businessman, they had to create enough value. It was easy to find 1 or 2 big businessmen who needed magic power, but difficult to find someone who needed it long-term. Of course, they could also find a business and rely on themselves. But this seemed to be the best way and also the most impossible choice. Relying on them who had no modern business experience and all their knowledge was from the previous era to do business. It would probably be a waste of money no matter how much it was. But before that, we need to get enough money from Madejko Pavic, Hamsun said. He doesn't need us much anymore, so this request for help might be the last time we work together. Plus, he has some dirt on us and we also have a lot of dirt on him. If we choose to stay in Los Angeles and cut ties with him, I'm afraid it'll be hard for us to coexist peacefully. So instead of waiting for us to turn against him in the future, it's better to make him lose the chance to make a move as soon as possible. Chapter 2462. After a busy day, Qin Zhao drove on the rural road. Because the road was empty, Qin Zhao was faster. Just then he saw the front of his car start to deform. It was as if he had crashed into an invisible wall. Boom. The car was traveling at a speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour. The moment he crashed, the car was smashed into pieces. Qin Zhao could feel it the moment he crashed into it. However, he didn't get out of the car. He even used his ability to make the crash even more intense. At the same time, Qin Zhao ignited his damaged car. Instantly, a violent explosion engulfed Qin Zhao. Just then a person walked out from the road. It was Manuel. "Uncle Hamson, it's done." That fast. Hamson was surprised. After all, the person had made Arsenal and Sark disappear. He should have some ability. Manuel was quite powerful, but since he was up against Qin Zhao, it shouldn't be that easy. Qin Zhao had only been out for less than 3 hours. Excluding the time spent on the road, there wasn't much time left. Just then, Hamson suddenly heard a second person's voice on the phone. "Done. Who did you kill? How come you're not dead?" Beep, beep, then there was only a dead tone. Hamson's expression instantly turned ugly. Manuel screamed. His hand and phone were both crushed by Qin Zhao's hand. "Let me guess. You were also sent by Madeko Pavich? Also, I heard you call Hamson uncle. Arsenal and Shaq also mentioned that Hamson is your leader. What rank are you in your immortal crown?" Qin Zhao wasn't asking at all. He was talking to himself. He squeezed Manuel's palm with one hand. Manuel's left palm had been completely deformed. Magnol endured the pain and took out his wand with his other hand. Black Death Magic Ray. A black bolt of lightning shot out from the staff. However, when it was less than 10 centimeters from Qin Zhao, it flashed strangely like an electric welder. It couldn't get any closer. Qin Zhao didn't care at all. He continued talking to himself. "What level is your strength in your immortal crown? Strong or weak?" Dragon's Breath. The magic staff shot out terrifying flames again, but this time, it couldn't even go 20 centimeters in front of Qin Zhao. The evil dragon's breath didn't even manage to travel half the distance before it disappeared without a trace. "Where is your base camp? Where is it in England?" "London." "Despair Soul. How does the crown of immortality rank in London?" "Heel of great evil. Eternal slumber eye light." Marshall was in despair. All of his spells were useless against him. What was wrong with this guy? No, he couldn't let this continue. Manuel was sweating profusely at the moment. It was hard to tell whether it was from fear or pain. Manuel gritted his teeth and tapped his wand on the ground. "Evil god of hell. Come out." Marshall's spell required a large amount of magic and continuous chanting. Fortunately, Qin Zhao had no intention of interrupting him. The more mana was consumed, the weaker he became. However, the magic array on the ground had already taken shape. A terrifyingly large arm pierced through the magic array. The arm slapped the ground beside Qin Zhao and used it as a foothold to prop up half of its body. "Evil god of hell?" Qin Zhao turned his head and looked at the evil god before him. The half-exposed giant didn't have the aura of hell on him. He wasn't a demon either. He definitely didn't come from hell. By now, Manuel was exhausted from overexertion. He was almost paralyzed on the ground. "You're not wearing any clothes when you go out. Go back." Qin Zhao pressed down with his left hand. Instantly, the power of the world turned into a giant palm. It slapped the giant's head, who hadn't climbed out of the magic array yet. Bang! Half of the giant's body was smashed. Then the magic array disappeared. The minced meat on the ground also turned into specks of starlight and dissipated. Manuel's mouth gaped in shock. He couldn't say anything for a long time. Instantly, all of Manuel's hair stood on end. Creepy. Who exactly was this guy? He'd summoned the evil god of hell. But he couldn't even block one attack from this guy. Qin Zhao pursed his lips. This evil god of hell wasn't just famous. Even his strength didn't match his huge body. Other than being terrifyingly huge, he didn't have any other abilities. Qin Zhao had only planned to shove him back into the magic array with one palm. But the palm had smashed him into pieces. If this guy came from hell and had strength that matched his size, he should be able to protect himself. Plus, Qin Zhao didn't even use his own strength in that palm. He'd only used a portion of the power of the world. With such weak strength, he'd been killed in one move. But thinking about Manuel's strength, it didn't seem like he could summon a creature that was too powerful. Qin Zhao had thought that the evil god of hell was similar in size to the abyss demons. Their strength should be similar too. But other than their sizes, there wasn't anything similar. Qin Zhao had thought that since Manuel could summon a powerful creature, the members of the association probably couldn't deal with his Uncle Hamsun. But now he realized that Manuel wasn't as strong as he'd imagined. West, come here. I caught another person who attacked me. He's also with that group. West heard Qin Zhao's words. He was speechless now. Qin Zhao was already speechless. At least his courage was worth praising. But couldn't the attacker be more powerful? Arsenal and Shaq's strength was simply an insult to others. Any random person from the headquarters could beat them up, let alone Qin Zhao. Including Adu's. Don't think that Adu's was weak as a guard. With Adu's enchanted equipment, there was basically no monster in the Los Angeles area that he could not deal with. Of course, this was because the ignorant were fearless. Qin Zhao was probably the only one who knew how strong he was. Qin Zhao wasn't famous, so it was understandable that he'd come here to cause trouble. West felt that the person who came to pick a fight was a little weak. When West brought people over, he was shocked to see that Qin Zhao's car had been destroyed. Could it be that the people this time were very strong? He could actually destroy Qin Zhao's car? Looking at Manuel, who was in Qin Zhao's hand, West's expression turned serious. Chapter 2463. Mr. Manuel. You too. Shaq and Arsene Wenger were locked in two separate cells in the dungeon. When they saw Manuel being dragged down like a dead dog and thrown into the opposite cell, they couldn't help but be shocked. Manuel had just received a baptism of love from all the members of the supernatural organization. Everyone looked at him like he was a rare animal in the zoo. After a while they left. Not long after, another one came. Of course, this was only mental torture. The real terror came from the physical torture. The members of the supernatural organization all copied Qin Zhao's actions. Either they didn't attack or they were extremely ruthless. When the police were interrogating someone, they might have to worry about leaving traces on the suspect. But they didn't have to worry at all. They were ruthless. Even if Manuel cried and begged to tell them the information. But his torturers were just torturing him for fun. As for the information, it didn't matter if they had it or not. Before Sark and Arsenal were sent here, they'd also enjoyed the full service of the supernatural organization. So they knew what kind of inhumane treatment Manuel had suffered. However, they couldn't do anything apart from looking at Marnia. Manuel lay on the ground for almost an hour. Only then did he slowly turn his head and look at Shaq and Arsenal, who were locked up opposite him. Mr. Manuel, how are you now? The two of you actually didn't die. Mano was somewhat resentful towards Shaq and Arsenal. Because they'd told him all the information. This caused West and the others to torture him purely for the sake of torturing him. He'd suffered a lot of torture for no reason. Couldn't they leave some information for him to tell them? Arsenal and Sark were both embarrassed. They thought that their information had caused Manuel to be captured. Mr. Manuel, Manuel suddenly jumped up. Oh no. What's wrong? Uncle Hamsun didn't just arrange for me. He also arranged for Dempus and Quince to do it. Evening, Angel Coast Baidao. Most of the tourists on the coastline had left. Only a few figures seemed to be packing up and preparing to leave. Alan had been sitting on a bench by the road. He held a drink in his hand and stared at the Coastal Rescue Team HQ silently. At this moment, Alan suddenly felt someone appear beside him. Mr. Dempus, why are you here? Alan turned around and saw that it was actually his elder. Mr. Hamsun saw that you didn't make a move after following him for a few days. So he asked me to come over and help you. Dempus coldly said, Where is the target now? She's out, Alan said as he pointed in the direction of the Coastal Rescue Team. Phalai walked out of the Coastal Rescue Team. Just then Jalanash and Enner walked over. Miss Phalai, are you off work? Yes, we can go back now. Jalanash, someone's looking this way, Enner said. Jalanash raised an eyebrow. Who is it? I don't know where they came from, but they are not weak. They are in. Nar said. Don't point. Pretend you didn't find anything. Get in the car, Jalanash said. Miss Feilai, drive the car to a remote place. Jalan, you've grown a lot braver. Nar chuckled as he patted Jalanash's shoulder. I still have you, Jalanash said calmly. I didn't say I was going to help. Fine, since I'm living and eating, I'll reluctantly help you this time. Jalanash wondered if she should look for a few detection and perception spells later. She actually didn't realize that someone was watching them at all. Then the three girls got in the car and left. Actually, they didn't need to drive to a remote place, because Mingyue Villa was already very remote. According to Nar, the two people who were monitoring them had been following them. President, we're on the way back to Mingyue Villa. There's a car following us. Jalanash was confident that she could take care of the stalker alone. But just to be safe, she decided to inform Chen Zhao. I know. Where are you now? We're about to enter the coastal highway. I'm at home, Chen Zhao said. I'll come out now. Dempus, who was following them, saw that this place was already remote enough. Speed up and knock over the car in front, Dempus said. Alan immediately sped up and chased after the car in front. They're going to attack. Looking at the car behind them, Jalanash said, they're speeding up. Looks like they're going to hit us. But just then Feilai suddenly sped up. She was only driving an ordinary four-seater today, but it was still a luxury car. Its performance was much better than Alan's and Dempus's cars. Feilai didn't plan on letting the stalker hit the back of her car. After all, if she was hit, the repair fees wouldn't be small. Can you open the sunroof? Anair asked. What are you going to do? I'll go up and give them a shot. Feilai looked at Jalanash beside her. Jalanash looked at Anar and asked hesitantly, Are you sure? Of course, trust me, Anar said confidently. Seeing Nar's confidence, Jalanash still let Feilai open the sunroof. Be careful. Don't fall. Nar, however, climbed out of the sunroof and stood on the roof of the car. What's with that girl? What does she want? Alan asked from the car behind. She seems to want to attack us from so far away. Then don't worry, I'm here. I'll drive your car, Dempus said confidently. At this time, Nar, who was standing on the roof, had already started to release magic. Anar opened his arms and slightly spread them back. Then he took a deep breath. Dempus was still full of confidence. Mr. Dempus, shouldn't we do some defense? No need. That girl is more than 30 meters away from us. No matter what magic it is, its power will be greatly reduced after hitting us. Also, she's young, so she won't be that strong. It's not too late for me to attack after she attacks. If we attack rashly now, we might make a mistake, Dempus said calmly. At this moment, Nar suddenly shouted and swung his arm forward. Storm's breath. An elementalist? Dempus raised his eyebrows. But the lethality of wind magic is too small. But just as Dempus finished speaking, the car he and Alan were in suddenly bounced up. At high speed, the car suddenly rolled over. Chapter 2464. Under normal circumstances, Nar's breath of the storm couldn't flip a car. A small car weighed more than 1,500 kilograms. Flipping it over required a wind speed of at least 140 meters per second. Normal wind magic couldn't create such a wind speed. But nothing was absolute in this world. Nar was smart too. Dempus and Alan's car was in motion. Moreover, Nar used the leverage principle. She didn't release magic directly at the car behind her. After calculating the distance and speed of the car behind her, she released breath of the storm on the ground. When the breath of the storm landed on the ground, it formed an angular reflection, forming a local storm at a small angle. Just then the car behind came over. The local storm directly affected the bottom of the car. In addition, the inertia from the speed of the car behind made it much less force needed to flip it over. That was how the previous results came about. But what really flipped the car over was its own speed. Nar's breath of the storm was a guide. Even Jalanash was surprised. At that moment, Chen Zhao, who was in the night sky, also exclaimed, "What a beautiful attack." He'd met that girl once when Jalanash had sent Feilai home yesterday. Because her magic level was at least half that of Jalanash. Chen Zhao didn't expect her to be so good at wind magic. After all, Chen Zhao had seen Jalanash use wind magic before. It definitely couldn't have such an effect. Just when everyone thought that the situation was settled. Suddenly, the window of the car on the road was kicked open. Dempus climbed out of the car in a sorry state. There was blood on his forehead. He'd clearly been injured. Qin Zhao was surprised that he still had the strength to climb out. Under the perception of the small world, Qin Zhao realized that Alan's injuries were more serious. At least Alan had lost the ability to fight. Dempus looked angrily at the car that was gradually moving away. All of a sudden, Dempus' figure flashed as he charged out. Speed type. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. So fast. Nar also realized that Dempus had caught up. Dempus was an extremely powerful strengthening type and speed type spiritualist. But Qin Zhao realized that Dempus' magic was different from Angelite's. Elite had directly added magic to his body. But Dempus' acceleration magic was applied to his legs. His upper body did not speed up. In terms of speed, he was no match for Elite. However, this method of acceleration also had its advantages. Dempus could use other methods of attack while running. This was also an advantage that Elite did not have. Angelite's magic and bloodline were very simple. They only increased his speed and slightly increased his physical strength. Apart from that, he also had an attack method similar to Qin Zhao's fist shadows. However, this kind of attack was also based on physical effects, not magic. Dempus pointed his magic staff at the car in front. Go to hell. The magic staff in Dempus' hand burst forth with a terrifying electric arc. Oh no, turn! Kerr exclaimed. But at that moment the terrifying electric arc was suddenly blocked by something. Nar couldn't see it clearly. He could only see the terrifying arc bursting out a strong curtain of electricity more than 20 meters behind him. What's going on? Who was the one who used his body to block that guy's attack? Stop the car. The car did not stop because it was completely unnecessary. No need, Fei Lai said. We'll only cause trouble if we go. She knew that she was just a normal person. She discussed this with Qin Zhao before. When both of them were in danger, should she stay and face it together with Qin Zhao? In the end, the result was that if she stayed, Qin Zhao's chances of winning would be lower. Facing it together wasn't the best result. When there was a chance to leave the danger zone, Fei Lai should find a chance to escape first. This is our president's private territory, Jalanash said matter-of-factly. Do you think someone can attack Miss Fei Lai here? Was it your president who attacked us? Nar asked. Aren't we going to help your president? The guy who attacked us is really strong. No need, Qin can solve the problem, Fei Lai said confidently. She didn't know how strong Qin Zhao was either. However, he was definitely stronger than the enemy who attacked them. The people of the supernatural organization had said more than once that Qin Zhao was one of the strongest humans in the world. Other than a nuclear attack, they couldn't think of any way to kill Qin Zhao. Of course, Dempus didn't know. Even if he did, he wouldn't believe it. However, his fearlessness and ignorance didn't change the result. With the obvious difference in power, he couldn't change the result no matter what he did. After 2 magic attacks didn't work, he immediately planned to escape. But his speed enhancement spell couldn't surpass Qin Zhao's speed. Qin Zhao easily blocked Dempus' escape route again. When Fei Lai drove the car into the underground garage, Qin Zhao was already in the living room. The 3 girls came to the living room and saw Qin Zhao sitting with his legs crossed. President, is it done? Qin, where is he? Did you kill him? No, I sent him back to the headquarters. Is your HQ nearby? You're so fast? Nar looked at Qin Zhao in surprise. She'd only met Qin Zhao once. Yesterday, after sending Fei Lai back with Jalanash, they'd had dinner here. However, Qin Zhao was like a sloppy man at home. He didn't have the dignity of a superior or the pride of a strong person. She thought that she was strong. However, the power that Dempus had displayed just now was hard for her to handle. She didn't expect Qin Zhao to finish the battle in less than 10 minutes. He'd also returned home first. Are you a speed enhancer? Sort of, Qin Zhao said. Speed is one of my strengths. You're not a pure speed type. No, my magic system is more complicated. Qin Zhao stood up. Let's eat dinner together. Nar realized that Qin Zhao's dinner was even more sumptuous than last night. There's so much food. Can we finish it with just the few of us? I just fought. I need to replenish my energy. Fei Lai rolled her eyes at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao ate so much every day. Just then Helis brought the kids out of the elevator. Helis clapped her hands. Go wash your hands and eat. Yes, Sister Helis. Helis sat beside Jalanash. She didn't treat herself as an outsider here. Did you wash your hands? Qin Zhao glanced at Helis. Chapter 2465. Helis raised her palms. The aura of death flowed through her palms. President, do you need me to explain the principle of my purification? Forget it. Qin Zhao did not want to hear how the aura of death killed the microorganisms in her palms. Perhaps the microorganisms could not even survive on her palms. The children quickly hopped to their seats. All of them were excitedly talking about the interesting things they had encountered in school today. Helis, were you attacked? Feilai asked, concerned. Oh, Miss Feilai. Were you attacked? Helis could not help but ask, raising an eyebrow. The children immediately stopped talking and looked at Feilai. Auntie Feilai, were you attacked? What a pity. Why didn't we? I prepared a few spells to teach the people who attacked us a lesson. Why didn't they attack us? The adults at the table all had dark expressions. Apart from Helis, no one else thought that being attacked was a good thing. As for Helis, she had originally thought that this was the mission that Qin Zhao had given her, to look after the children. But now she felt that she had to become a protector. And because she didn't encounter any attacks today, it made her very unhappy, very unhappy. Stanley, you didn't attack, right? Mr. Hampson, didn't you say to wait for Mr. Truman to come before working with him? Mr. Truman didn't come. That's good, that's good. If he contacts you, tell him immediately not to attack for now. But Manol, Allen, and Dempus all failed. We've completely lost contact with them now. But Mr. Hampson, why didn't you contact Mr. Truman directly? I can't. Then could he already? No. Hampson knew Truman very well. In the third generation, Truman's magic talent and abilities were the most outstanding. Even Hampson himself was not confident that he could deal with Truman. However, Truman had a huge flaw. He had no self-control, especially when it came to drinking. To put it bluntly, he was a drunkard, a terrible drunkard. Most of the time he would get drunk and delay his mission. Those juniors might not know, but Hampson understood Truman too well. After all, Truman was his direct disciple, and the student had surpassed his master. In the third generation, Truman was the youngest, but he was also the most outstanding. If he was given another 10 years to reach the average age of the other third generation, his strength would definitely be enough to kill him on the beach. Go to the bars and have a look. Maybe you can find him. Hampson thought for a moment and said, forget it, I will get someone to divine his location. The current situation was somewhat out of his expectations. First, it was Manuel, and now something had happened to his nephew. Then something happened to Allen and Dempus. One could imagine that their goal this time was not as simple as they had initially thought. Dempus and Manol's strength was at the top of the third generation or even the entire immortal crown. But now they had lost contact with both of them. This caused Hampson to suddenly feel an unprecedented pressure. After all, this was not their home ground. He realized that the intelligence he had gathered earlier on was completely useless. All the spiritualists they had found and contacted had not told them that there was a local group that was not weak. In Hampson's opinion, this was not only not weak, but also very strong. Of course, Hampson did not know that most of the spiritualists active and making a living in the Los Angeles area maintained a certain relationship with the supernatural organization. When a foreign spiritualist or an organization came here, they would tell the other party most of the true information, but they would tacitly keep some information. The supernatural organization maintained a good relationship with the local spiritualists. Of course, those who were not on good terms were basically driven away. And for some local supernatural incidents, as long as it was a problem that could be solved by an individual, the supernatural organization would not interfere. At the very least, they had to leave some jobs for the individual spiritualists to support their families. This was also a manifestation of the prosperity of the area's supernatural world. If all the supernatural incidents were monopolized by one or two large groups, then the area's supernatural world would lose its vitality. And the supernatural organization would not only leave the individual spiritualists with the opportunity to complete missions, but also cooperate with them. And Hampson's helplessness also stemmed from their own immaturity. The crown of immortality had only been established for a short time. They spent most of their time in London. Therefore, they did not understand that when going to an unfamiliar area or city for information, most of the time, they had to go to the local supernatural organization instead of individuals. West, the guys who were caught, Didn't they say where they were hiding? Helly's dialed West's number and asked. They did. Do you want to go alone? Yes. Actually, the president already knows, West said. He's just monitoring them now, but he hasn't done anything yet. He has his own plan. Hearing West's words, Helis was a little disappointed. She couldn't ruin his plan. She had indeed wanted to go and destroy the Crown of Immortality's hiding place alone. But she was still unhappy. Why was she not attacked? Was it because she was too strong? But she had not shown her strength. Plus, she hid her aura much better than Jalanash. Jalanash and Nash had been attacked, but why was she not? Was it because the other party thought that she could be easily dealt with? That was why she had purposely hidden in the dark and watched, only acting when needed. Help me tell the president that I want to be the main force when we attack the English. I'll tell him. West did not mind. Based on the information from the captives, he knew that the Crown of Immortality's people in Los Angeles were not weak. After all, they were an organization from Europe. However, they were at the bottom in Europe, while the Supernatural Organization was the strongest supernatural organization in North America. This was almost equivalent to a third-tier European football club going up against a first-tier Chinese football club. Of course, some of the people in the Supernatural Organization had already reached the level of a top spiritualist. In soccer, it was impossible for one person to fight against an entire team, but it was possible in the supernatural world. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2466. Mr. Chin, I think I still need to rest. I don't think I've fully recovered yet. Syndicate had thought that he'd already recovered when he was hospitalized. However, the moment he stepped out of the hospital, he felt a dull pain in his arms again. Qin Zhao glanced at Syndicate. If you're not ready, I'll transfer your daughter to a regular ward. If your training doesn't meet my expectations, I'll send your daughter home directly. All right. Sinka immediately agreed. His daughter was his weakness. He couldn't disobey Qin Zhao's request at all. Run from here to Mountain Town. Mountain Town? Where? I have to run? I'll send you the jeeps. Before I leave, can I see my daughter again? Sure. Qin Zhao nodded. Syndicate walked out of the isolation ward and saw a tall and burly woman. Even the woman who was slightly taller than him was sitting outside the isolation ward with her eyes closed. Syndicate was stunned. The woman before him gave him a very dangerous feeling. She definitely wasn't a nurse here. A nurse wouldn't give him such a creepy feeling. Gaia opened her eyes and glanced at Syndicate indifferently. I'll be responsible for your daughter's safety for now, Gaia said calmly. I'll also be responsible for part of your training. Syndicate sounded doubtful. He wasn't doubting Gaia's professionalism, but he didn't think that Gaia had the ability. There was an undeniable difference in physical fitness between men and women. With the same weight, height, and fat content, men's fitness was obviously higher than women's. A dangerous glint suddenly shot out of Gaia's eyes. Syndicate retreated abruptly. In that instant, he felt like he'd been targeted by an extremely dangerous predator. Goosebumps rose all over his body. His limbs also stiffened severely. Can't move. Syndicate suddenly realized that his body was completely frozen. He couldn't move at all. The next moment, a smile appeared on Gaia's face. At the same time, Syndicate's body was no longer restrained. Not bad, Gaia said with a smile. As expected of a professional boxer who's fought in the ring. But at this moment, Syndicate felt an indescribable bitterness. He didn't understand what was wrong with this woman. However, he knew that if they were in the ring, this woman could KO him in an instant. Because it was impossible to resist the suffocating pressure in the instant she made her move. Did Mr. Qin send you here? Tiger is half her disciple. Just then Qin Zhao walked over. Xing Zhao was dazed. Tiger was her disciple? But if you want to accept my technical training, please complete his physical training first, Gaia said, pointing at Qin Zhao. Hinga looked at the glass window, the peaceful daughter. Take care of my angel, thank you. This time Syndicate finally made up his mind. Xing Jia held the phone and looked at the navigation. Mr. Qin, 55 kilometers from here to Mountain Town. Or did you send me the wrong location? That's right. But I'm a boxer, a heavyweight boxer. It's impossible for me to run that far. No, you can escape. I really can't run. Think about your daughter and you'll be able to run. Heavyweight boxers don't train like this. I trained Tiger before. Do you think you're better than him now? Xian Jia really wanted to discuss this with Qin Zhao. However, considering that his daughter still needed to rely on Qin Zhao for recovery after surgery, thus Xian Jia kept his personal thoughts to himself. Mr. Qin, you want to run too? I'll follow you. Soon Xian Jia understood why Qin Zhao would follow him. He ran in front while Qin Zhao drove and enjoyed the scenery along the way. Plus, Qin Zhao was eating ice cream. This, on the other hand, was a form of torture for Syndicate. Do you want one? Qin Zhao drove slowly to the side. It's high-calorie food. It's not healthy. Only if I say it's not healthy, Qin Zhao said matter-of-factly. Because he was the authority, his words were the truth. People needed to be forced. If they didn't, they wouldn't know where their limits were. Xian Jia couldn't believe that he'd actually run 55 kilometers. What did 55 kilometers mean? It was longer than a marathon. However, it would take Sin nearly 13 hours to complete the task. He'd run from morning to 9 at night. He wasn't a marathon runner to begin with. He didn't know how to allocate his stamina at all. In addition, he was twice as heavy as an ordinary long-distance runner. It was a huge test for his stamina and endurance. However, whenever he thought of his daughter, he'd be filled with fighting spirit. It could be said that his daughter was the one who supported him. When he reached his destination, he lay on the grass beside the road, panting. As an athlete, you should know that there is a possibility of cardiac arrest if you suddenly lie down after a strenuous exercise. Fuck, I don't care. I don't even want to move now, Xian Jia cursed. Just then Qin Zhao's phone rang. Okay, got it, Qin Zhao replied briefly. After hanging up, Qin Zhao said, get in the car. Where are we going? Gaia caught a few people who tried to approach the isolation room, Qin Zhao said. Xian Jia jumped up from the ground. How's my daughter? She's fine. She's fine. After Xian Jia got in the car, he started urging Qin Zhao to drive faster, faster and faster. It took them less than 20 minutes to cover a distance of more than 50 kilometers. Xian Jia hurriedly jumped out of the car. He was about to run into the building when Qin Zhao stopped him. Don't run so fast. They don't know the building. Where is it then? On this rooftop. Xian Jia and Qin Zhao went to the rooftop. Xian Jia immediately saw a few people lying before Gaia. They were all black. They were all lying on the ground, clutching their body parts and wailing. One or two of them had clearly broken arms and legs. Gaia, did you find out where they came from? Yeah, I think they were sent by someone called Dolores, Gaia said. Dolores? Who? Should be a gang leader. I'll ask someone. Qin Zhao was about to take out his phone when Xian Jia said with a serious expression, I know who he is. Chapter 2467. Who's Dolores? Do you know Mingo Avenue? Yes, it's full of gangs, Qin Zhao said. Dolores is the leader of one of the black gangs on Mingo Avenue, Syndicate said with a serious expression. Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes. Look after his daughter, Gaia said. I'll go take a look at Mingo Avenue. Sure. Qin Zhao nodded. Syndicate, come with me. Help me point out their gathering place, Gaia said. Dolores is the leader of a gang. He has 4 gunmen with him all year round. He also has at least 100 underlings at his gathering place. Most of them are armed. I know, Gaia said indifferently. But, Syndicate, you have to understand that they're here to hurt your daughter, not to play with her. Qin Zhao patted Syndicate's shoulder. Are you sure you want to hesitate here? Let's not care about their motives. Since they came once, they can come again. Hearing Qin Zhao's words, he looked at the gangsters on the ground. Forget it, I'll go all out. At worst, I'll just die. Don't worry. Gaia will protect you, Qin Zhao said. I don't need a woman to protect me. Qin Zhao glanced at Gaia and then at Syndicate. That's for the best, Qin Zhao said, smiling. Along the way, Syndicate, who had gradually recovered from his anger, started to worry again. Gaia, shouldn't we get some weapons? I know a gun shop. He has a bunch of weapons that don't need to be registered. Syndicate also came from the slums, so he more or less had some connections with the local gangs. Naturally, he could get in touch with them. No need. Weapons will only get in the way, Gaia said indifferently. Take me to Dolores's headquarters. Syndicate took a deep breath. I know he has a bar nearby, but it's his territory. Most of the people there are his underlings. That's for the best. Syndicate brought Gaia to the entrance of the bar. Here. Yo, this car is not bad. Before Syndicate and Gaia could get out, two gangsters walked over and knocked on the hood of Gaia's car. Gaia did not care about the gangsters standing outside the car door and directly pushed the door open. Pa, the gangster outside was slapped to the ground. Fuck, are you blind? When the other hoodlum saw this, he immediately rushed over. Gaia got out of the car unhurriedly. Looking at the gangster rushing over, he sent him flying with a kick. The hooligan flew 2 meters away and fell to the ground, unable to stand up. He clutched his stomach and rolled on the ground. The first hooligan who was slammed to the ground by the car door pulled out his gun and pointed it at Gaia. Bitch. I'm going to fuck you to death. But before he could fire, Gaia grabbed the gangster's hand that was holding the gun. Let go, crack. The delinquent's palm was deformed and so was the gun in his hand. Syndicate himself was a heavyweight boxer. However, when they saw Gaia's heavy hand, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The two hooligans had been taught a lesson by Gaia and did not dare to stay any longer. Just you wait, our boss is Dolores. The two thugs scrambled into the bar. Syndicate knew that Gaia was very powerful. However, he did not think that this was a wise way to deal with the situation. Gaia did not care about what Syndicate thought and swaggered into the bar. Syndicate hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should follow. However, after thinking about it, he decided to go in and take a look. After turning a corner, Syndicate regretted his decision. Because he saw that the flashing neon lights in the bar had stopped. The dozens of people in the bar were staring at the entrance as if waiting for them to walk into a trap. Was it those two? They were the ones who beat me up at the entrance. The two injured hooligans pointed at Gaia and Syndicate. Gaia looked at the crowd. Is that Dolores here? Syndicate gulped and pointed at Dolores in the middle of the crowd. It's that man. Dolores looked at Gaia. He did not recognize him. However, he did recognize Syndicate. So it's you. Dolores sneered at Syndicate. I heard you found a backer. Did you send people to attack my daughter? So what if I did? Dolores had no intention of covering up his actions. That's enough. Gaia stepped forward. All of you go and break their arms and legs. Dolores saw two hooligans walking toward him. He immediately got into a boxing stance. He easily dodged the two attacks and landed a beautiful punch on the hooligan's chin. The hooligan was knocked out by his punch. Then he easily dodged the other hooligan's attack and followed up with an uppercut. The hooligan immediately did a backflip. Syndicate realized that he was in a good state. No, it should be said that he was in a surprisingly good state. Syndicate looked up at Gaia to see if she needed his help. However, he felt as if there was something wrong with his eyes. Behind Gaia lay 7 or 8 hooligans. Bang! One of the hooligans who charged toward Gaia was punched in the stomach by Gaia. Then she let go. The hooligan flew back into the crowd and pressed down on 3 or 4 people, making them unable to stand. Syndicate looked at Gaia's figure in shock. He had only taken care of 2 hooligans. He thought that was already the shortest amount of time possible. Even if Gaia was slightly stronger than him, she shouldn't be this fast, right? In less than 10 seconds, 10 hooligans were already lying on the ground. This was equivalent to her taking down every hooligan in less than 2 seconds. At this moment, Syndicate suddenly saw a hooligan pull out a gun. Watch out! Just as Syndicate finished speaking. As if she had eyes on the back of her head, Gaia suddenly dodged to the left. Bang! The moment the bullet missed, Gaia pounced on the hooligan who fired the gun like a ferocious tiger. The hooligan still wanted to shoot a second time. However, he no longer had the chance. Gaia single-handedly grabbed the hooligan's arm and twisted it. The hooligan's arm had already become a fried dough twist. Quick, take out your gun and kill this woman. Dolores was panicking. He had never seen such a terrifying woman. However, this woman had only used 30 seconds to break through half of his men. Dolores also held a gun in his hand, but he couldn't aim at Gaia at all. Gaia's body was clearly tall, but her movements were so fast that it was difficult to capture. My arm. No, Gaia wasn't in a hurry to deal with Dolores. Instead, she dealt with all of his men. Chapter 2468. Syndicate was completely speechless. The first time he saw Gaia, he had been somewhat disdainful, even though Gaia was heavier and taller than him. But he still felt that men had an absolute advantage over women in terms of muscle mass. This was from a physiological point of view. However, Gaia had still used a terrifying pressure to make him feel pressured. But it was just pressure. He still felt that he was stronger than Gaia without it. Now he finally realized what he and Gaia had sensed. The difference was completely unreasonable. The 60 or so hoodlums in the bar were all lying on the ground. Some of them had guns, but they didn't pose any threat to Gaia at all. Syndicate had only knocked down 3 hoodlums. Gaia looked at Dolores. Dolores was no longer arrogant. His entire body was shaking like a sieve. He stared at Gaia in extreme fear. This woman was a monster. Dolores held a pistol in his hand and he gripped it tightly with both hands. But he didn't even have the courage to pull the trigger. Don't come over. If you come over, I'll shoot. It was the first time Syndicate had seen someone with a gun so afraid of an unarmed person. But he could understand Dolores' fear of Gaia. Even he was afraid of Gaia. No wonder Qin Zhao would let Gaia be his coach. Now, Syndicate couldn't be disrespectful to Gaia anymore. Gaia took a step forward and kicked Dolores in the chest. Dolores crashed through the fiber board behind him and flew several meters away, crashing into the wall. The pistol he hadn't been holding properly was now on the ground. Don't come over. How much money do you want? I have money. Gaia lifted Dolores with one hand. Dolores wasn't small. But before Gaia's monstrous strength and tall body, Dolores was like a child. He was lifted up without any resistance. How dare you touch someone that my boss wants to protect? How much money does your boss give you? I'll give you more. I have money, a lot of money. Dolores seemed to be grasping at the last straw. He felt that since others could bribe this monstrous woman in front of him, he could too. As long as the problem could be solved with money, then it wasn't a problem. Although he was just a gang leader, he actually controlled a few of the most lucrative illegal businesses. It was just that it was not convenient to take out that money. However, if it was used to bribe them, then there would be no problem. Gaia ignored Dolores's cries. Who told you to attack the daughter of the syndicate? Gaia asked. If I tell you, will you let me go? Gaia reached for Dolores's shoulder. Crack! Dolores' shoulder shattered. This was accompanied by Dolores' tragic wails. Gaia's expression was still cold. Who told you to do this? It's Tiger, it's Tiger. Dolores did not have the awareness to keep a client's secret. Especially when it came to his own safety, he was willing to pay any price to save his own life. Plus, Dolores hated Tiger to the core. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have provoked such a terrifying monster. Gaia and Syndicate both looked as if they had known this would happen. Of course, Syndicate was even angrier. It's really his mother. Gaia was somewhat disappointed. When Qin Zhao told her what Tiger had done in the past year, Gaia still did not want to believe it. Her feelings for Tiger were similar to Qin Zhao's. In her eyes, Tiger was still a big boy. No matter how bad he was, how bad could he be? But at this moment, Tiger really disappointed her. This disappointment soon turned into anger. Gaia casually threw Dolores before Syndicate. Lady Gaia. Do whatever you want to him. Dolores could no longer stand up, but he was even more terrified. His life was hanging by a thread. Dolores looked at Syndicate pleadingly. Syndicate, forgive me. I know I was wrong. Please. I won't do it again. Let you go? You'll take revenge on me after you recover? I really won't do it again. Whether you will or not, I won't let you go. Actually, Syndicate was just bluffing. Putting aside his identity as a boxer, he was just a normal person. How would he dare to kill someone? And there was more than one gangster here. There were witnesses everywhere. Lady Gaia, what do we do now? Do we really kill his mother? Gaia glanced at Dolores. Forget it. I'll get a professional to deal with this. A professional? Syndicate thought that Gaia would call a wave of killers. In the end, he called for a garbage truck. Henry came with a group of people. Regardless of whether they were dead or alive, they were all stuffed into the truck. Gaia, what do we do with these people? Kill them and use them as fertilizer? Or keep them as dogs? Bring them back first. See if we can get any useful information from them. If we can't get anything, we'll sink their money to the bottom of the lake. Syndicate was a bit worried. Lady Gaia, are they trustworthy? More than you, Gaia said calmly. Henry and the others were on their side, but Syndicate wasn't. Hey, it's getting late. Find a car and go back. I won't send you, Gaia said. Also, regarding Chen's training plan, you better not be lazy. You should know that you're useful to him. But if you can't meet his expectations, you better pray that you're lucky enough. Syndicate shuddered in fear. Overnight, everyone on Mingo Avenue knew about it. Something strange had happened here last night. Dolores had disappeared along with his dozens of underlings. Judging from the scene in the bar under Dolores' name, there had definitely been a chaotic battle here. Not only was the scene a mess, but there were also many bloodstains. Dolores and his underlings had all disappeared. Who could have abducted Dolores and his subordinates in a single night? Dolores wasn't weak at all. However, without a leader, Dolores' underlings ran into walls like headless flies. It was also because of this that many gangs on Mingo Avenue suddenly became well-behaved. However, when Tiger heard this, his reaction and feeling were completely different from other people's. Did you find out? Yes, I did. At the entrance of the bar, two tall people went in. One of them was a woman. Chapter 2469. Women. Yes. Tall women. Yes. Tiger's heart suddenly sank to the bottom. He thought of a person who also terrified him, Gaia. Tiger's fear of Gaia was more direct. Qin Zhao had never attacked him before. But Gaia. Almost all of Tiger's techniques had come from Gaia. No matter how strong Tiger became, Gaia could always make him lose all ability to fight and move with one blow. After not seeing Gaia for more than a year, Tiger had almost forgotten about her. But Gaia had suddenly appeared and returned to his memory in such a way. The entire bar, the gang's headquarters, had dozens of people. Disappeared just like that. Only the passers-by nearby had some impression of her. This mysterious terror made Tiger's hair stand on end. Now the two people he feared the most had both appeared. Tiger knew better than anyone why Gaia had appeared in Dolores's bar. Tiger, do you know something? Bok asked. He could already tell that Tiger's expression wasn't right. Bok, are there any competitions abroad? I want to fight there. It's not the season. There aren't any competitions. Then arrange a fight, Tiger said. It doesn't matter if the price is low. I just want to stay abroad for a month or two. In the boxing world, it was very common to arrange a fight. As the only Grand Slam winner in the boxing world, Tiger was already the most famous in the boxing world. Tiger was already the most famous person in the boxing world. He was even close to catching up to the legends in history. So, there were naturally many people who challenged him. Hearing Tiger's words, Bok immediately understood. Tiger, you have to trust my boss. He definitely has a way to solve your problem. But it's already been a week and there's still no news from your boss. If he could solve it, he would have done it already. Why hasn't he solved it yet? Tiger suddenly roared and raged. Bok was also confused. In the past, his boss had always solved problems quickly. At most, it would take a week and everything would be fine. But this time, it had already been more than a week and there was still no reply. Even He himself suspected that there might have been an accident this time. Tiger, even if it's a challenge, it can't be decided in a short time. Bok felt that it was necessary to wait. After all, an internationally renowned athlete like Tiger had to decide on a match. First of all, the venue, ticket sales, sponsors, live broadcast authorization, and competition prize money would all require a long period of negotiation. Wasn't it the same as saying that if someone challenged him to a duel, he would accept the challenge and make his decision? Then train abroad, Tiger said. Syndicate, you can go into the sea now, Qin Zhao said. Swimming. Boxing training has never been like swimming, Exinjia said. Swimming did have many benefits for the body, such as relieving physical fatigue and relaxing muscle stiffness. But this was precisely not good for boxers. This was because boxers needed to tighten their muscles at all times so that their muscles could explode with power at any time. No boxing coach would allow their trainees to swim. Qin Zhao had taught Tiger before, so he knew this. However, Qin Zhao had already given Syndicate a lot of perfect crystal potions. However, Exinjia's physique was unable to completely absorb the medicinal power of the mixture. Therefore, Qin Zhao needed to let the medicinal power completely release in Exinjia's body. Exercising a lot and relaxing the blood flow in his veins was the best way to release the medicinal power. This was why Qin Zhao chose to let Exinjia train in swimming. Compared to the side effects of swimming, the benefits of releasing the medicinal power were far inferior. If the side effect of swimming was 1, then the benefits of absorbing the medicinal power would be 100. I have my own training methods. You just need to listen to me. Qin Zhao did not explain too much. But Xin Jia felt that Qin Zhao should let Gaia train him as soon as possible, instead of letting him train himself randomly. No buts. Go into the water. Xin Jia could only go into the water helplessly. Mr. Qin, how far do I need to swim? Until I'm satisfied, Qin Zhao said. Xin Jia jogged toward a wave. As the wave receded, he followed it. On the other hand, Qin Zhao stood on a small wooden boat, drifting with the waves. Xin Jia adjusted his strength. He was not in a hurry to sprint. However, as he swam, he realized that Qin Zhao's small wooden boat a few meters away had no paddles or motors, but it could still follow him. Swim as fast as you can, Qin Zhao said. Xin Jia was a bit unhappy. Mr. Qin, it's very dangerous to swim at full speed. No, it'll be even more dangerous if you don't swim fast. What? Qin Zhao pointed behind Xin Jia. A shark is swimming toward you. Huh? What? Xin Jia looked back and indeed saw shark fins poking out of the water. Shocked, Xin Jia hurriedly swam toward Qin Zhao's small wooden boat. Pull me up. Xin Jia did not think that he could swim faster than a shark. Even if he was a professional swimmer, he would still die horribly if he encountered a shark, not to mention that he wasn't a swimmer. Xin Jia swam toward Qin Zhao's small wooden boat with all his might. However, before he could reach the small wooden boat, 2 more shark fins appeared around the small wooden boat and circled around it. Xin Jia almost peed his pants. He turned around and ran. Xin Jia swam as hard as he could until he was exhausted. He did not dare to look back, afraid that the shark would catch up to him. But after 7 or 8 minutes he was out of energy. Just then a bottle of water fell before Xin Jia. Replenish some energy. Xin Jia looked at the small wooden boat that was now almost 50 meters away. Qin Zhao was sitting on it holding a bottle of beer. But there were still 2 sharks swimming around the boat. But where did the shark that had chased him go? Xin Jia hesitated. Should he turn around and swim toward the shore? Just as he was thinking about it, the shark's fin suddenly appeared more than 30 meters behind him. Xin Jia peed his pants again and swam with all his might. But the bottle of water did help him recover quite a bit. That shoal really hoped that the shark would knock his small wooden boat over. As Xin Jia ran, he cursed Qin Zhao in his heart. After a few more minutes, Xin Jia was exhausted. Just then Qin Zhao tossed him another bottle of water. Xin Jia suddenly felt that something was wrong. Chapter 2470. Xin Jia felt that every time he ran out of energy the shark would disappear. After Qin Zhao gave him water to replenish his energy and a short rest, the shark would appear again. This was too abnormal. Xin Jia suspected that he'd only seen the fin of the shark that had been chasing him earlier. Could it be that it wasn't a shark at all, but a person wearing a shark's fin to scare him? Or maybe it was a small submarine. Anyway, Qin Zhao was rich, so it wasn't strange that he had these things. Fuck you, shoal, I know. It's all fake. There's no shark at all. Xin Jia decided to stop being enslaved and tortured. He felt that his guess was correct. Qin Zhao was using the shark's fin to scare him. Also, his boat didn't have any power, but it could keep following him. This meant that there was something in the water that was holding the boat. Oh, I remember. You just called your boss asshole. Qin Zhao looked at Xin Jia. You'll regret it. Xin Jia gave Qin Zhao a middle finger from afar. Just then Xin Jia saw a shark's fin pop out of the water again. Are you going to play the same trick again? Since I've seen through it, it won't work on me anymore. Although Xin Jia firmly believed that his guess was correct, he still shivered when he saw the shark's fin approach. Gradually he saw the water in front of the shark's fin being pushed away. Then a smooth gray-white skin popped out of the water. Although he couldn't see the whole face, he could tell from the back that it was a submarine. It's done perfectly. They even gave the submarine the skin of a shark. Xin Jia's smile was a bit forced. But the next moment, a huge creature jumped out of the water and streaked past Xin Jia's head. Xin Jia saw it. It was a great white shark that was 10 meters long. Yes, the ultimate nightmare of the ocean for humans. In the 1970s, the movie Jaws appeared out of nowhere and brought fear of the ocean to people all over the world. As for the great white shark in front of him, It was as if it had come out of a movie. The great white shark landed in the water in front of Xinjia, creating huge waves at the same time. By then the wooden boat was not far from Xinjia. Qin Zhao sat on the wooden boat and pointed his phone at Syndicate. I think you can swim back now. I hope you can survive. Let me on the boat, let me on the boat. Syndicate was so scared that he almost peed his pants. This small wooden boat can't bring you safety, Qin Zhao said indifferently. You should believe that you can swim to the shore alive. Let me go up. Look, that great white shark's mouth is really big. Syndicate turned around and saw a bloody mouth that was so big that he could see the throat. It was coming towards him. Start swimming. Xinjia had no choice but to swim. It was a real great white shark this time. No matter how tired he was, he had to continue swimming. If he wasn't careful this time, he might really lose his life. No, it should be said that no matter what, it was very likely that he would lose his life. That damned bastard, why didn't the great white shark attack him? Syndicate really hoped that the great white shark would be smarter. With just a gentle push, that small wooden boat would be overturned. Then it would be able to eat its fill. Xinjia swam with all his might. This is a very painful thing. The energy in his body was almost used up. But for the sake of his life, he had to force out more energy from his body. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but Syndicate suddenly felt that he had more strength. He swam faster too. Perhaps it was because he was going with the tide, so he didn't use as much energy as going against the tide. He could already see the coastline ahead. Soon it was less than 2 kilometers. No, it wasn't even 2 kilometers. As long as the water was less than 10 meters deep, the sharks would leave. They didn't like to be stranded. I'm actually so smart, Syndicate thought to himself. Suddenly, while Syndicate was sprinting at full speed, something seemed to pass by him. His heart skipped a beat. He looked back. Isn't that Qin Zhao's daughter? Why is she in the sea? Fuck. Perhaps it was because Qin Zhao had saved his daughter. Therefore he couldn't just watch her die when he saw her. Singa turned again and headed towards little Jerlin's direction. But at this moment he saw that the bloody mouth was already coming towards little Jerlin. It's over. Seeing this, Syndicate was in complete despair. He would die in the shark's mouth, let alone save the little girl. Little Guan Guan. Seeing old Guan, one of the 5 tiger generals, Jerlin immediately called out happily. Zinga was stunned for a moment. He saw that the terrifying great white shark did not swallow Jerlin in one gulp. Instead it slowed down and circled around Jerlin. Just then the small wooden boat came to Jerlin. Jerlin looked at Qin Zhao on the boat. Mama said I can play in the water for 2 hours today. Really? Why don't I remember? Qin Zhao reached out and lifted Jerlin out of the water. Jerlin stuck out her little tongue. Qin Zhao looked at old Guan in the water. Complete your mission. Old Guan, who'd been circling the small wooden boat, charged towards Syndicate again. You asterisk shoal, you're lying. Syndicate turned around and ran again. But even though he knew that this was a training program, not everyone had the courage to face the bloody mouth. 10 minutes later, Syndicate lay in the shallow water and kept coughing up water. The small wooden boat was slowly washed to Syndicate's side by the waves. Looks like your training is good. You asterisk shoal, you ordered that great white shark. Syndicate didn't understand why a shark would listen to Qin Zhao's orders. But it was obvious that the great white shark did listen to him. Even his daughter wasn't afraid of the great white shark. Carrying Jerlin, Qin Zhao waded to the shore. Syndicate followed. To his surprise, he seemed to have recovered a lot of energy even though he'd been so tired earlier. Just then, Helis drove the car through the coastal road and returned with the kids who'd just finished school. The car stopped by the road and the kids dashed down the beach. Kilo, how come you're back so early today? Uncle, there's a fire at school, so the principal told us not to go to school for the next 2 days. Fire. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. Are there any casualties? No. Kilo looked at Syndicate. Uncle, what are you doing? Training him. No, I should say investing in him. He looks so weak. Divine King of the 9 Heavens, that you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.